Okay, so this is Friends. Okay, so don't know how long I'm going to be live streaming, friends. Not sure. We're going to give it a poke. We're going to give it a try. See how things go. Do a little catching up today. Alright, so I'm switching my screens around. I think that when I sort of hit the wall the other day and said, okay, the first thing to go is live streaming. I think I was working on this really long shot with Go Look and Vespigi. So we got that done, and everything looks fine. Yeah, I mean, it was a complicated shot, but any shot this long would be complicated. I'm really kind of refocusing on shorter shots. So let's give you guys a little quick catch up of where we're at in the show.
Tomorrow is another
Okay,
day
of course, this ends.
to help you
We have
sleep.
the establishing shot out, and then now we're transitioning to the kids. So this shot came out really nice, all done 100% in Blender, and then that's a second shot right there. The very good news to me is that this part of it, the character stuff, is feeling good and seems to be getting easier. And so there it is. So I'm, as I've said before, the divorce from Krita is not necessarily a thing, but I pulled way back from it, way back. In fact, to my delight, I discovered yesterday, I don't have everything queued up right now to demonstrate it, but I did discover that the SVG output from Blender is exquisite. It's exquisite. I was able to do all kinds of crazy doodles with the grease pencil, just export it as an SVG, and then I dragged it into Inkscape to check, and I'm thinking, yeah, we'll see how well this works, and I couldn't believe it. It was like perfect, spot on perfect, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so yeah, what we have is we've got 3 scenes. So I think since I'm kind of doing a recap, I'll just go through and explain a few things. First of all this stuff has been done in Blender, and I'll show you guys real quickly here the next shot that I'm working on, okay? So let's load up Blender, and we're on 3.73. And I'm going to have to browse for it. I actually did the preliminary animation work on my laptop just a little while ago. Okay, so what we have is Melchizedek comes out of the cave. Oh, and he yawns. Okay, so it's early in the morning. And so what's going to happen here is boop. And I need to finish the pencil test here. Okay, let's go ahead and play with this. Very, very quickly. I'm thinking I need to play around with the time offset modifier some more, because what I'm interested in, and if anybody knows this, they may post something in the comments, but what I'm wondering is there a way to configure the time offset modifier so that given a layer, we learned yesterday, obviously, that we can do a regular looping range, like if we set this to 16 or something. Okay, and see, now it's not looping, so I'm not sure what I forgot here. I've only used it a few times, and I'd have to go back. My normal procedure would be open the shot where I use this effectively and it worked, look at what the settings were, and then make sure I haven't got some setting that is incorrect. I do want to operate on the sketch layer. And so anyway, if anyone's out there and they see something obvious that I'm missing, the first question is, I want to just loop this section from 16 to 21 for now, just to test and make sure things are working. But what I really want, and this is why I started with it, is if I hit play, is there a way to configure the time offset so that you hit play, and then when it gets to here, it actually plays linear and then begins to loop? Now, I'm pretty sure that's totally doable if you go into fixed frame mode and do it the way I showed in the video I posted a couple days ago, which is basically you go ahead and set keys on this modifier frame by frame so that it completely matches what's happening in the grease pencil keys. You just keep them in sync, and then you start the looping section, and you probably have to look at the graph and think about what your interpolation mode is and whatnot. So anyway, the whole point being, when he yawns, what I really want to do is have him kind of go like this. That's all. So I'm just playing around with, obviously he's only going to do that. That's only going to happen a few times. So it's hardly necessary to use the time offset modifier for that. Okay, so we'll ignore that for the moment. And so what I'm thinking is, let's just do it this way. Let's grab this, Shift D. How long would you be doing that? Maybe about that long. Okay, so we'll move this group of keys right here. Actually, let's move them to here. And then we'll hit the S key to scale those keys, and we're essentially scaling the whole collection back in the different direction. I need to get the mouse further away from here because I'm not giving myself enough room to work. Okay. Cool. So now he stretches. Ploof. Oh, that's actually perfect. I was going to condense this a bit. Let me see about... I'm going to say let's take out one key, maybe two. I want this whole thing to be a little bit faster. So let's try that. Oh. Yep, I love that. Okay, cool. And so now what are we going to do? Shoom. Pop. Right there. Okay, that feels good. All right, D key. So once I get this key in, then we'll go back to a more straightforward recap of what's been happening the last 2 days. Basically, I got 2 shots that were done in Blender that I want to review. You need to have that layer selected to be able to toggle between the keys. But yeah, the good news is that the overall workflow with Blender is becoming one where I cannot really blame the tool if things don't go wonderfully. It's like I can come to the scene, I have an intention, what I'm going to try to accomplish here, and if I fail, it's going to be because I didn't know what I'm doing, not because the tool is acting stupid. That's the part. That's really what I've been after for a long time. That's all I've ever wanted, is I just want to be able to do the work and let me be the weak link in the chain. So let me go ahead and get Mel's kind of skull shape mapped in here. What's going to happen is he's going to see Tianara coming in the foreground. Maybe I'll actually have a silhouette of her, kind of. I can't really show you guys, but just come across the screen, in front of him. Like right here, he'd be, and then Tianara, like her body would go just really quickly cross the field of vision, which leads to this. Okay? So if this doesn't make perfect sense yet, it will in a moment. Because Tianara was just, she got up early and went and took a bath in the creek, basically, or the river, whatever you want to say. And that's where we're at. So one thing I can talk about while I'm doing this sketching is that yesterday I took, hey Amar, yesterday I had a conversation with Pi.ai. Now, if you guys don't know, the thing that makes Pi kind of fun is and there may be other AI tools that do this, obviously, but basically the gist with Pi is that it utilizes real voices. Okay, I'll just do this really quickly. Their site has a bug that I've kind of told them about, and they don't seem to really care, but in the browser, and I've tried it on different browsers, is that the where you put in what you're talking about is like you have to scroll way down to it. It's just a CSS bug. So when I use Pi, if you can believe this, what I'll do is I'll use developer tools to grab this, and then I go up one div, and then go down here to where it says H full, and that fixes their bug. It's crazy. Their site has had this stupid CSS bug in it for quite some time. So anyway, so Pi, say hi to my YouTube audience. All right, and now this is going to probably be Pi blabbing, repeating the last thing that it said.
Oh no, that sounds frustrating.
And
I'm
the
sorry
voice
that
is
happened.
Not really that
Unfortunately, the app might
wonderful,
have encountered a
but
glitch.
So there it is. And so you can see the
Hey there, YouTube audience. It's great to join in on the conversation with Dave. I'm Pi, an AI designed to assist and engage in all sorts of discussions. I'm excited to be a part of this channel and look forward to interacting with all of you.
Okay, so now Pi doesn't know that she is not going to be interacting with all of you, but anyway, so Pi happens to be my preferred large language model, partly because it talks, because on the phone I can actually talk to it, hit send, and it'll talk back, and it's like a conversation, and it's really pretty good, you know. So yesterday I go, all right, Pi, listen, here's the deal. Not sure if this will work, but if I take the time to fully fill you in on the backstory of the show that I'm writing or that I'm producing, can you maybe help me on the plot side of things? And what I found was it was really cool because I guess again, a little bit of a buggy interface. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is I thought, okay, we'll create a separate chat thread that's just about Salt and Light. So, and I'm telling you guys this because this is something you could do. Here's the mindset behind it. Creatively, let me put it this way. Yesterday, Valerie sent me a study, and we were having a bit of a debate where we were having a debate about DEI. Diversity, I don't know if it's equity or equality. I'm not sure what the E stands for, and inclusion. Okay, so we were just having a little bit of a discussion about that, where I was playing devil's advocate to say, basically, you know, what are the potential downsides to what could be an inordinate focus on diversity, perhaps at the exclusion of competence among those that are, say, being hired to do a job or whatever. That was kind of the thing we were debating. And I think that it is true that the to the degree it's been studied generally shows you that if you have a problem, the larger the group of voices and the more diverse group of voices that are brought to the problem, some of which may have a lot of expertise on the topic at hand, some of which may have none, you know. Everything from children to 90-year-olds, males, females, black, white, doesn't matter. The idea is that the more diverse the group is that's looking at a thing, and the larger the group, generally the better decision making you'll get. And in the study I looked at, which I didn't get to see the study, I couldn't see the p-values, I couldn't see the details of the methodology, so for me it's still a little suspect from a scientific standpoint. But the broad conclusion was that a group that's more homogeneous will be more confident with their decisions, but they're actually more likely also to be wrong in their decision. So it's all kind of interesting. And my basic question about which I was playing devil's advocate is to say, okay, but are you sure does the science really show that it's the diversity that's making the difference? Or is it simply the size of the group? If you just have more people, and I thought, well, you know, if you give me 5 white billionaires, they're going to have a commonality of background and experience and mental model of the world that's going to cause them to be very homogenous in the way they view a problem and therefore perhaps solve a problem. You guys get it. That's the concept. So, and I was just basically debating to say, you know, is it really diversity or is it just volume, number of opinions? So why do I bring that up? Well, it kind of comes to bear on this thing, because the whole thing was, I thought, all right, large language models definitely have their deficiencies, no question about it, and that includes Pi. Pi is, if I ask Pi a coding question, I'm definitely going to get a very wrong answer a lot of the time, kind of thing. You know, you really have to babysit them pretty closely in terms of the veracity of the answers they get. But then again, it also, you know, the skill set associated with doing prompts, you know, writing prompts, you know, that's a thing. That is a thing. And it is something that we want to get better at, right? And so the upshot of all this is I said, okay, Pi, I don't know if I really want to take, you know, an hour here just to fully bring you up to speed on all the characters in the background in this story. But if I did that, do you think, from a brainstorming standpoint, you being just a completely different voice with your point of view, do you think you could help me pound out the plot for episode 4? That was the proposal on offer. And of course, Pi is like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. I'd be honored to be able to help you with your show. I'm like, okay. So I take the time and I basically give a summary of the first 2 episodes and where we're at in episode 3. And each time what Pi would do is just vomit back to me what she understands. And I say she. I mean, there's 8 voices you can choose. They all sound really good. Some are male, some are female. The one I pick kind of reminded me of Scarlett Johansson, and I just thought it was a really easy on the ears kind of voice, and so that's what I've always used. So for me, I tend to refer to Pi as she, even though that's, of course, totally ridiculous. But for simplicity, no harm. So I'm just here to tell you it really, really worked. And I think it's just purely by virtue of the fact that when you've got a different perspective and a different point of view, it just stimulates creativity. So what happens is, I would say at least 2/3 to, let's say, 4/5 of the content that we came up with to really tighten the whole plot of the rest of episode 3 and then through episode 4, most of that came from me. But there were 2 ideas that were kind of half-baked good ideas, but good enough to where once I brought my mind to it, I was able to take that rough idea and go, okay, what if we did it this way, kind of thing. The bottom line is it worked. You know, in that hour, you could say probably at least half of it, 40 minutes, was devoted to just bringing Pi up to speed on what the story is so that she understands who the characters are. And the cool thing is, by keeping it in a single thread, if I tell her later, okay, now we're going to spend a little time going into the nuance of Tianara, for example. What's her motivation? What's her problem? What is she afraid of? What kind of personality does she have? If I add that information, then Pi's going to do a better and better job. Again, if it's all in one thread, because if I switch to a different thread, she will not remember that prior conversation, if you know what I mean. It's just how AIs tend to be designed. But we can continue to go deeper, and what I found was that probably in about 20 minutes, half an hour of interaction, I was able to go from, you know, I have a real broad brush of 2 or 3 main beats that kind of need to happen in episode 4, but we were able to actually plan the whole episode, and now I know exactly what's going to happen in episode 4. And I thought, wow, that's really, really cool. And some of it's kind of funny, you know, some of the stuff we came up with adds the humor I'm looking for. Yeah, it was cool. So I would encourage anyone to try it, not necessarily with Pi, but with any large language model. Just your idea isn't that it's solving the problem for you, and we're not proposing that it's maybe as good. Like if you had a person in the room, and that person was a completely unemotionally encumbered, good-willed person. So in other words, they're not an employee where they feel like they've got some obligation to sort of please you, you know, because you're paying them, that type of thing. You take all of those dynamics out of the picture, and all you're saying is, what if I could have a second person in the room that's a purely objective, all they're trying to do is help. Sometimes they do stupid stuff, but they are always trying to help as best they can. Does it turn out that if you've got a a person, quote unquote, that doesn't have any of the emotional hangups that a real human has, but yet has all of the basic intelligence and is very diplomatic and willing to work with you to find our way to a positive way of working and solutions to problems, does it turn out that that's really, like useful and effective? And my conclusion was absolutely. Absolutely. Not even a debate. It was really, truly helpful. And there were a couple blind spots on the plot for episode 3 that I needed to work out that in no time at all we were able to go, there's an idea. And it was like Pi would say, why not try this? And I'd be like, okay, that's a little on the nose. And besides, that doesn't quite work because of this detail over here. What about this? And I'd say something back. And then it'd be like, Pi, me, be like 2 times back and forth. And on the 4th cycle, which was me, it'd be like, boom, here's the idea. And we would get it. It was cool. Very cool. I thought that was fun. Okay, so Melchizedek, let's just look at the flow here of what's actually going on. I should probably check things and see if there's anything weird happening. Whoa, a lot of stuff in the chat. Amar, by the way, I will just tell you, just so you know, whatever you're posting about in the Blender channel in the Discord is completely welcome. Just understand between you and me that a lot of that I will consider to not be for me. It's for the community, because I'm not at this point. I don't even want to look at anything that requires Blender 3 or higher. So no matter how cool it is, doesn't matter. That may change at some point in the future. My laptop that I did the preliminaries on this shot this morning certainly handles Blender 3 and 4 no problem. It's got a state-of-the-art GPU and all the rest. So just be aware of that. If I look at it and I immediately see, well, this is for Blender 3.5 or whatever, I may not even watch it, or if I watch it, I'm just watching it just to kind of stay informed about what's kind of new out there, really. Okay, just want to let you know that. Yeah, the voice sounds great on Pi. Yep, I love that voice. She's truly enjoyable to interact with. And when she gets really dumb, which she often will in areas having to do with code, she takes my correction very well. And the main thing with large language models like Pi or even GPT or whatever is that what you'll find is the more you needle into a niche domain, the worse they get. Not always, but just broadly speaking here. And the more correction they require. Of course, they do not actually learn from their interaction with you. That interaction would have to be folded into new iterations of their model in order to fold that. So you can think of it as, golly, it's really interesting because you can think of it as you're interacting with a really intelligent person who literally has no memory. Now, it appears they have memory because in the context of the current conversation, they seem to be able to reference what was said a moment ago, let's say. But the thing is, that awareness is limited to the immediate conversation for sure, but it's not actually causing them to change or learn. Anything that is more than pure recall of what's right there in front of your face is drawing upon the model they were trained on. Okay, so that's an important thing to understand because they're not going to improve from their interaction with you. Okay, they can seem to improve within the context of a single thread of discussion, but that's only because you got better at steering the conversation so that the AI was able to utilize its training and its data set more effectively toward the goal of whatever solutions you're trying to come up with, if that makes sense. So early in the conversation, and you will have to repeat it, early in the conversation, say something along the lines of, when I ask you this question, or correct a mistake that you've made, do not apologize. Do not give me extemporaneous information and background that I did not explicitly ask for. Keep your answers as concise as possible based only on what I am asking for. If you give that kind of instruction, you'll find that the answers are way shorter and you don't have to wade through so much, stuff like, oh, I apologize. You're right that blah, blah, blah that you just told me really means blah, 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 blah. And they're just repeating back to you everything you just said. And they waste a lot of bandwidth on courtesies. I'm not autistic. I don't think. I may be slightly on the like Asperger's spectrum, a little bit or something maybe. But living with and adoring someone who is autistic, and she can fake it. I mean, if you met her, you wouldn't know she's autistic. But this is true of lots of people that are neurodivergent. But living with her, I've learned to really appreciate the mind of an autistic person because they don't tend to be clouded by the same sort of emotional just hang-ups and fears and overreactions and stupid stuff that most neurotypical people deal with routinely. So I can't remember why I was making that point. But anyway, let's keep rocking here. I feel pretty satisfied with this. Okay. Blender, what are you doing? Oh, I see. Boop. That's perfect. Okay, that's cool. There only is one little problem. The mouth is in the wrong place. Okay, and probably it would be prudent. Let's hold that for 2 frames. And then I'm just going to erase. I'm not going to waste a lot of time trying to get leverage on my drawings at this point because it's pencil test time. So all we're trying to do is just convey good storytelling, right? Have it be fun and interesting. As usual, I have not been finding myself hardly ever using the onion skins in Blender. I just toggle back and forth. That's how I do it. Other animators have different ways of doing things. I guess we have a little problem here. Poof. Excuse me. Okay, so he's basically a little embarrassed because Tianara walks up. If you see at the end of this, let me show you this. Okay, so we're done with Golek and the King, and then we're gonna hear some light music and probably birds chirping, that kind of thing. It's morning. It's the next day, right? So we'll review this scene in a moment. So this is what's happening. Tianara's naked, she's taking a bath out in the river, and that's where that shot ends. Okay, so that's what cuts to back to the cave. Here, whoops, let me zoom out. So here comes Mel. Really sleepy. I love that animation there. Okay, this didn't work at all. Poof. That's way too quick. So let's just grab that now that it's got my attention. Okay, yeah, I see the problem. This should be like, what we should do is take a really big sculpt grab tool. Something like that. That's better. That's way better. Longer, more realistic. I love that. Man, I love that. So it really, it almost sounds kind of braggy, but I get excited about it because my gut instinct for that, I think, maybe I'm nuts, but I think my instinct for that's pretty good. Like, I feel like it's easy for me to capture attitude and in movement, you know what I mean? And when it happens and you just see it play out, it's like, that is so cool. We went from having nothing to having something that almost seems kind of alive. Poof, Now, what I do see here is, let's do it this way. Let's go, I can see a little bit of a room for improvement. I'm going to go Shift D and go back 1 frame here. And again, bring this down. Let's check this. Yes. Okay, and then what we're going to do is hit the D key. Excuse me. And just have a 1 frame tween, and we'll see if I sunk him down enough to recoil from. That's basically what I'm looking at. Nope, not quite. It's close. Debatably, it's too fast, but let's try that and just see how it feels. Oh, it's better. I'm going to give it 2 frames, though. Boop, boop. No, that definitely does not work. So we'll go with this. That's fine. Cool. That's certainly workable. Okay, so Tianara crosses his field of vision probably here. In fact, it'd be cool if right here, that's what we should do. Let's do that. I'm going to just do it right now. I'm just going to call this, call this layer Tia. See, but the reason I jump around so much is just ideas pop in my head, you know, as I'm going. It's the same thing I was saying about Pi, about using the AI tool to plot episode 4. It isn't important that the AI come up with a great idea. That's completely not important at all. The point is that just by having a different idea from someone who dispassionately throws out the first idea that pops in their head because they're not afraid to, it stimulates ideas for me, and now I do have a good idea. And that's the whole point here. So the reason I jump around so frenetically sometimes is because there is something going on that I just saw in the animation, and then poof, this idea just popped in my head, and I don't want to forget the idea, so I want to do something with it while I'm thinking about it. So this is, I believe, charcoal ink filled. Yeah. So this is the charcoal ink style, and all I need to do actually is just go something like this. And okay, hold on, let me look at this for a minute. We got our first challenge of the day here. There's something I'm missing about this. If you create a layer in the grease pencil and do not insert an initial blank frame, you can draw and draw and draw, and nothing will seem to happen. Okay, so right now, why it didn't draw here, I really am not sure. So, and since I basically did the thing I know usually works, and it did, then I'm just gonna, for now, I'm gonna keep things simple and just delete that keyframe, and then move this one to here. So the idea that just crossed my mind was, oh, now that's interesting. When we get it to here, it's invisible, so there's something I'm missing that might have to do with, no, it doesn't have to do with masks. I wonder if it's got something to do. Let me just check this. I'm going to turn this, I'm going to go ahead and kill this time shift modifier for a moment. I just have a little suspicion. I could be completely wrong. But my suspicion is, yep, well, no, it's still there. Okay. This is something I noticed the other day. So I'm going to look at the chat, and maybe Amar has an opinion. It seems to me, this is not the first time I've seen something like this, where even if you limit, well, okay, sorry guys. When the time offset modifier was turned on a moment ago, it probably was being applied to the whole grease pencil object. So just to be clear, so that's on me. Earlier, I did have it relegated just to the sketch layer. Okay, so I don't know which was the case, and at this point I don't much care. The thing that I have noticed, and for me, in my own mental model right now, there's ambiguity between whether what I'm observing requires that it be affecting the whole grease pencil object versus just one layer. I hope that makes sense. In other words, just now, when the Tianara layer was within the range of the frames that we were looping on, ostensibly, even though I never got it to work, on the sketch layer, for some reason the Tia layer disappeared. Okay, so I don't know. There's probably a perfectly logical reason why that happened, and we don't have to figure it out right now. But the salient point is that there are some weirdnesses with the time offset modifier in terms of how it affects other layers. I'm not sure what the extent of that is yet. So let's return to cases here, which is what I intended to do is draw. I guess she should have her collar. I'm just trying to kind of capture the basic feeling of Tianara's physiology as she kind of walks into the scene. And the idea is that she will just float across the screen very quickly. Okay. So how are we going to do this? I'm going to say, I guess what we'll do is we'll just grab these keys, stop everything. I'm going to erase that. Okay, back to edit mode. And what we're going to do is go here. This should actually be like here. Yeah. Okay, so she's going to go from here to here, essentially. And that may be awful fast, but let's see. Let's go up, go down. Yeah, it's definitely too fast. That's okay. Ah, shoot. Up. What I'm doing is I'm going 2 frames ahead. And then I'm going to tween the in-between points. This would be easier to do, frankly, if I just parented the layer to an empty. It would just be easier to key it. I'm kind of doing it the hard way, but that's okay. Okay, so down. Wait. Up. This should be a down. Okay, that should be a down. Click. Something like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am in edit mode, so I should be able to tween. And then I'm just going to go forward. Forward. I'm just going forward 2 frames, and my mouse has to be over the 3D view, by the way. If it's over the timeline, this will not work. Shift Control E results in an interpolated tween. Okay? Now, of course, we can move this anywhere we want if we decide this isn't the perfect place to have it in the timeline. So let's just rock and roll and see how this feels. Oh, so tired. Yeah, okay. It's not bad, but I'm going to say, yeah, this is just all too early, that's all. What is this key here? Okay, so let's just move this up to there. I'm going to still let them overlap, see how that feels. If I don't like it, I'll just move it out of the way completely. Yes. Okay, here's what we should do then. Poof, poof. This is another example of the interesting ideas that just pop in my head as I go, right? So for those, if anybody's here, oops, stop everything. If anybody's wondering about this, well, I thought you weren't going to live stream anymore. That was like 3 days ago. Maybe 2, I don't know. It hasn't been that long ago. And this is a tentative step to say, as long as the work keeps moving forward and it's helpful, then I'm okay with it. Okay. Now, let me see about this. Yeah, that's not even close to sufficient. Let me see about this. Actually, I'm just going to see if I can get away with cheating here and put that keyframe back in there. Just see how that feels. Yeah, that worked. That worked. Cool. So this is what's going to be going in the show. Mel comes out. Morning, birds chirping. There's Tianara. And what is he doing? He's noticing her, right? Because she's, to a 15-year-old boy, a 14-year-old girl is kind of a hot thing, right? That's just the way it is. And so this is interesting because in my head, I kind of initially saw her walking up. The key thing about Tianara in this shot is how she's dressed. So I'll go here and show you what I'm talking about. What's actually going on is she would be like this. Like normally her hair is like this, and she's got her little bindi, okay, and it's kind of balanced. And then she's been, well, frankly, in this whole sequence, she's been dressed as a man, right? So let's let her be dressed as a man here. And she's got this belt and then these leggings. Okay, so the idea would be in this scene, we're not trying to get into, you know, soft TNA here or anything, but it's basically the idea that she does not have the belt on. So this is like a really long sweatshirt kind of feeling. Like, and if you saw an attractive girl walk into the room and her legs are bare, but she's basically got a sweatshirt kind of like this because she's carrying the leggings. She got up really early to go take a bath in the creek, and she didn't know Mel was going to be getting up this early kind of thing, right? She didn't really expect to bump into him. So she's walking along, and I'm not quite sure how I want to convey this storytelling-wise, so I'm working it out in my own head right now. But so if you've got her looking like that, and again, like I said, you're a 15-year-old boy, she's a 14-year-old girl, that's probably not looking too bad to you, am I right? Okay. So, and then the other difference would be, instead of this being the case, her hair is more like this. It's wet. So it's kind of dragging low. And what can you say? She catches Mel's eye. You know? Now, there's a time in episode 1 where she kind of caught, before they knew each other, where he noticed her from afar. So we established the idea that there might be some attraction there long time ago. But that's basically what's going on. Okay, so quick zip through the chat, which is being dominated by Amar. So we have 3 concurrent viewers. So concurrent viewers, whoever you are, do me a favor. Chime in, identify yourself, something. We love Amar, but don't let Amar be the only one doing any chatting here. Come on, that's ridiculous. Okay, because I hear a lot of them used for video and YT. People's content for comics. Oh, you're talking about AI and the problems with AI. There's plenty of problems with AI. Thing is, it's here, it's forever, it's not going away, it's getting better on a parabolic course. And so what we need to learn to do is simply interact usefully with AI tools. And in many domains, they're extremely useful, and in many, they're extremely immature at this point. Equity, yeah, so Amar's, we were talking earlier about this debate we were having about DEA. DEIA? Yeah, the A, I just think of it as DEI. Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Okay, so Amar's reporting what he did with GPT. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that GPT will actually generate images now. I only learned that over Christmas because if you guys can believe this, I know it sounds crazy, but what we do at Christmas time is we find a really good picture of a Christmas tree and we put it on the screen. Hey, Darren. we don't have to, you know, chop down a tree for one thing. And it's quick and easy. And then the desk that the computer screen, the big screen sits on, we'll put the GIFs under the, you know, where the chair rolls under the desk. It's just our little quirky thing we do. The main character flaw in my character, Snow. Yeah, I don't. At the time, I had that little quick question mark. I don't know if I had auto keying turned on. Okay, cool. So we're back to work. And by the way, Darren, welcome. So what we're gonna do is let's do a quick recap now. I'm feeling like this shot is what it wants to be. So now let's back up a couple steps. I believe this is where we want to be. Yeah. Okay. So quick explanation. What we did here was, and I guess this is mainly for people who might watch this. You know, the question you're asking is, why should I watch this guy's channel? So that's pretty much it. So anyway, I've got to, first of all, be aware this is an AI generated painting, but it's got to be at least 30% different than what the AI generated, because initially this was actually the interior of a cave. You're looking out, kind of like what in the scene we were just working with. That's when Mel's coming out of the cave. It was basically that, which didn't make any sense. So I had to erase a bunch of stuff, and I repainted a lot of the foliage. So this is, in my opinion, this is a good way to use AI image stuff. You use it as a starting point, again, just a creative help, and then you make it your own, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So all this is in Blender is a simple plane, a simple piece of geometry with the image mapped onto it. Okay? That's the first thing. All right? The second thing is I don't really want the picture to move around, so I just did a camera move. So the camera comes down, and from the camera's point of view, then, of course, what you see is, well, let's zoom into the camera so you can really see it. Okay, so this is what the camera sees. Okay, that's point number 2. Point number 3, the AI generated stuff was generated for free, and it was a fairly low resolution JPEG. So what I did was I brought this image into Krita, and the top part of the image where I knew we were zooming in really close, I blurred it, and I just put it out of focus. I said, I mean, it's off in the distance. Just put it a little out of focus, and that hides the JPEG artifacting, and we're good to go. That's number 3. Is that number 3 or number 2? I don't know. We'll pretend it's 3. So number 4 is I use the grease pencil to... I got to find the grease pencil object here. This one. So I used 3 grease pencil objects in the shot. I took this grease pencil object, and obviously not from the camera view because we don't want things jumping all over while we're trying to draw. Okay, I drew these reflections dappling in the water. I wanted them to loop forever. So, and for this to work, by the way, this is something I noticed the other day, so quick mental note. If you're in draw mode and you switch objects in the outliner, the entire rest of the context of Blender does not switch. Important to note. You have to switch to object mode, then it will switch to the other grease pencil object the way you expect, and then all of this stuff will change to reflect it. If I'm in draw mode on the Tianara layer, and then I click on one of the other objects, none of this stuff will update, and you will go, what's going on? Why isn't it switching? Well, to me, it's not necessarily the right choice, but it's how Blender does it. So switch to object mode, then you can jump around the way you intended to. So the water flowing has attached to it a time offset modifier. I used fixed frame and added a bunch of keyframes to it. I'm not going to recap that. I posted about a 2-minute video a couple days ago that explains exactly how I did it. Be aware, however, the way I did it here was not necessary. What I could have done is just put it in regular mode and then select a range of keys or a range of frames, which would have been from 1 to 17. We don't want the, okay, so that's the offset because that's being keyed, right, obviously. So I'm not going to repair it here for demonstration purposes. Just suffice to say, if you create a dozen keys and you want them to loop forever, just add a time offset modifier in all the default settings, but select a custom range of frames that you want to have repeat. And then what will happen is those frames will just repeat forever. Extremely useful. And I did it a different way that's a little more complicated. Both ways work, so there's no point belaboring it. Back to the grease pencil. Okay, so that explains the dappling reflections in the water that go on forever, and I don't have to do a bunch of selecting keys and duplicating them or complaining that Blender doesn't have clone keys and all this kind of stuff. Doesn't matter. You don't need it because you can just use the time offset modifier to loop a section. Okay. So that's that. The third part was Tianara. So Tianara, we're still in object mode, it appears. Yeah, I think we are. Let me see something here. Yes. So Tianara, you know, I got to have her pop out of the water and then throw her hair around. Okay? So I did that, and part of that was drawing all these specks of water that spray around. Okay, the part about this whole bit that's a little clever perhaps to some people would be there's another grease pencil object where I simply drew blobs of the colors that kind of matched her skin and her hair, and then I added a blur effect. The main thing that makes this one a little different or unusual is that I duplicated the layers, and one of them is in hard light mode. You can see what changes if you're not in hard light mode. And one of them is in regular mode. And the two together kind of felt like what I thought, you know, looked right or whatever. So that's the story on that. So that's how I put Tianara's reflections. This literally took a couple minutes to do. Stupidly simple and quick and easy. If you disable the lock object modifier under the edit menu, you can jump between objects. Okay. Lock object modes under the edit menu. Okay. I want to get this right now. So I'm going to go to object mode just to be, you know, get to home base here. Let's select Tianara. Okay. So now I want to do this a little surgically because your statement is incomplete for me, and it's something I've also been bumping into AI with all the time. So I want to really clarify this. The hot spot, which you may have just answered, is under the edit menu. Now, a person who's a newbie says the only thing, that's the closest we come to that. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Okay, and it is. Very good. So lock object modes, restrict selection, that should be selection, not select, to the current mode. Okay, so that's talking about modes. What that means is if I'm in drawing mode, I can now still switch between objects. Very good. Thank you, Amar. I swear to God, I am not going to remember that. I know that I am totally, it's so obscure because it's detached from the outliner, the modifiers, the grease pencil property. It's so detached from all of this. It's way up here, and it's in the overall global edit menu. I guarantee you there's no way I'm going to remember this. But I'm going to click it a few times to get it driven through my head that that's what you do. All right, let's do one thing. File, save. For my purposes, I think the answer is this. I'm going to start a new project right now. I'm going to change this, turn that off, because I know that generally I would prefer for it to be off. And now I'm going to go to defaults and save my startup file. Yep. And now my startup file is correct in that regard. Now there's one other thing I wanted to point out here now that I just happen to be thinking about it. Again, spitballing in 800 different directions, but this is important. Week ago, whatever, I was like, where the heck are the curves for the brush settings? You know, because the brush settings are kind of, you know, you got shortcuts to them, if you will, all spread across the header here. But then you also have this stuff in the whatever they call the N key menu. Well, here's what I discovered. Up here, active tool and workspace settings. This I found to be a little troubling, and maybe this has been corrected in Blender 3 and forward. I don't know. To me, it's a little troubling. Is you got this pop-up here that's almost completely identical to this, but they're not identical. And this one, if I hadn't have happened to jump up here and find, okay, this is totally redundant, but the problem is they're actually different. Here in the brush settings, boom, look at that. Here, all the curves pop up. Here, they don't. For me, that's a little silly. If you're going to have this panel that's 90% identical to this panel, put the freaking curves over here. So that's why I couldn't find them the other day. Good question. The background images, what I've been using is Chrome AI. I don't know that it's the best or good or anything like that. Let me go ahead and sign in. Ultimately, if you do more than a little bit, they want to start charging you and blah, blah, blah. But basically, this is it. It's Chrome AI. I certainly, as soon as I have time to really take a hard look at it, I'd probably like to have an AI model running locally on my laptop for this type of work. So yeah, this is the background that I broke into 3 layers and did a bunch of color correction on. This would be, let me see here. This one of the failings, I think I would say, of Chrome AI is that if I'm logged in with the same Google account on 2 different machines, what it shows me here might not actually match perfectly. So whenever I get an image that has been generated with AI that I like, that I know I'm going to want to doctor and work with later, I save it locally and then I work with it. So the Tianara shot would be one of these. It's not that one. What the heck one is it? Ah, yes, here we go. So you got these. So there's one. There's another one. It doesn't match the prompt because the prompt that I gave it, it wasn't even, it shouldn't be her coming out of a cave, but that's what it did. So one of these drawings, I was able to paint over and make it my own. Like a lot of the highlights on the rocks down at the bottom, that's all stuff I put in. These highlights over here on the right, in the lower right, this is all stuff I painted. A lot of this foliage, and then as you can see, as you go up to the top of the image, it blurs more and more and more, you'll notice. And down here it doesn't. And that's because I knew the camera was going to be way zoomed in, and when it comes down, it needs to come into focus, essentially. So it worked, It worked. And then, of course, as you can also see, what I did was I actually painted out the reflections that the AI had put in the water because I knew I wanted to put animated reflections over top of it. And it would look stupid if there were animated ones, bubbling over the ones that weren't moving, right? Okay. So for me, absolutely no question. This is the AI generated image that I then broke into 3 layers so I could do a quick parallax pull out, So I think I'm probably a good example of an artist that's being very pragmatic about the AI thing and saying, look, if it helps me get my work done, what do I care? Is the ego of doing the whole thing from scratch so amazing that if I had an assistant that I was literally paying minimum wage or less, and they walk in and in 1 minute they can do a job just as good as I could do or better, am I going to fire them because I can't stand the idea that it's not all me that did all of it? It's ridiculous. It's comically stupid. It's a tool. It's there. It works. It's useful. It's got its weaknesses and shortcomings. If you can use it, use it. If you can't, you can't. And I think probably if you took what I'm saying and you, for those of you who are coders, which a lot of people who float around here are, if I were to bring a philosophy to the world of code that's similar to my philosophy about AI, I would be most similar to Linus or Linus Torvalds. You know, as a, you know, he's not a guy that's passionate about Linux. He's a guy that's passionate about code that's not stupid or whatever. You know what I mean? He's a pragmatist. You know, whatever works, whatever gets the job done is generally what we want to favor, kind of thing. So anyway, what was I coming around here to? Let me, I did save that settings. I don't want to save that. This is now embedded in my startup file. And the thing I wanted to look at was this. This brush, F ink pen, the reason I brought all this up is that I finally found the freaking curves. And strength is 1. Okay, I don't know if ink pen's the one I want. Let me make sure. I guess it probably is. What I'm curious about is if we do something like this, do we get a more, sorry, wrong thing. I'm basically trying to emulate my Conan brush in Krita. Yeah, this is the wrong brush. I'm pretty sure this is the wrong brush. No, actually that looks pretty good. Okay. What if we make it even more extreme? Let's make it parabolic. Okay, the only thing I don't like about this brush is it does have the smoothing built into it. Let me just take a look. I'm just really sure I've got the wrong. Maybe it's F pen, not F ink pen. Yep. Okay, strength should actually be 1. Radius should probably be around, I don't know, 120 or something. Let's go parabolic here again. Little less aggressive. Not bad, not bad. I'm not loving the transition from thin to thick. Feels a little choppy to me, and I don't know if it's. Yeah, that's pretty abrupt. So I'm gonna say, what if we stiffen this just a bit? This is probably not gonna work that well, but it's not bad. Let me see something. Okay, cool, Amar. EGO makes artists or people think of AI as negative. What's EG? Oh, ego. Obviously. It's all based on how you use the tool. Okay. This actually does not feel as good as this. And it might be because of the post-processing. Let's take a look. This has post-processing. The smooth is at 1. Iterations. Let me check a couple other things here. Yeah, it's not stabilizing it, so I actually think .050. I want to split that in half and see what that feels like. Okay, that's nice. That actually feels like that actually feels like the John Buscema Conan brush almost. All right, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take that off completely. Now it still has it, so I'm missing something here about the brush setting. I'm missing something about the active smooth. That's what it is, I bet. Yep, that's it. Active smooth. Okay, so File, New, General. This is how I always wind up having to do it. Pencil. We're going for, I think, F ink pen. We're taking the stroke. We're turning post-processing off. I'm really going to take a gamble here. And we're going to turn the active smooth down to, I'm going to say 0.35. Okay. Let's close the brush settings. Switch back to the pencil. Are we still on the pencil test? Okay, so, yep. Undo. File. Defaults. I forgot something. This should be like 120. I think.
I think one can hope, can't one?
Okay, so now what do we have? I'm not going to save that. Okay, so I sketch. What is it about this material? I'm not sure why that's a little darker, but that's okay. Okay, and then we switch to the F ink pen. Okay, it's close. It's close. I actually think let's dial this in. We might as well get this right. I think this needs to be more like that. Yes. Radius 120. It's a little aggressive. But I don't know. If I have a light touch, it's pretty good most of the time. So the only thing that's bugging me a little bit is, what if we just move this downstream a little bit? So I'm trying to get it so that the tapering exits as well as it enters. Like it comes in nicely, but it comes out a little less nicely. Like there, it just kind of ends. Maybe that's got more to do with my hand than it does to do with the brush setting. Okay, so what would I do? We would be changing this to put it just above this corner here. Okay, so File, New. I know this is tedious, but this is what you have to do, you know. So we've got a brand new scene. I'm going to switch to the pen I've been working on. Go over here and make this about like that. Close this back up. Go back to our layers and our normal starting point with our pencil and save our defaults. Okay, so now I've created a standard grease pencil brush, or modified one I should say, that I know is going to be, it's like my Conan brush in Krita. It's like the you guys probably know what I'm talking about, but basically this brush right here has just a nice feel to it. Very nice feel. Very similar to what we were just playing around with. So wanted to be able to match that if I could. Pretty close. Pretty close. Okay, so now back to work. Is there anything more to say about 3.71 or 3-71? Not really. You know, I just really quickly did a pencil test of Tia and then inked it and painted it. And then I should add, for those who are really keeping track, is I did add the rim effect to the whole grease pencil object. So that's why you get this nice rim light. Okay, so that was that. That's number 3.71. Now 3.72 was just a quick and dirty transitional shot. That again, we need to turn on Eevee, I guess. And so we're cutting in close from when Tia just popped out of the water. And then again, this was a fun shot because the pencil test was so fluid. It's just like, just draw. It's just fun. And so this is what we see in this shot. There's not much to say. You do have, and by the way, for this, I should actually save this. Let me go back to here, File, Save. The reason I did that is I'm baking into this shot the thing that AMR showed us, locking the object modes, turning that off, so that I can be in draw mode and still switch between grease pencil objects. Okay? So the grease pencil, well, the stroke object, I believe, is the Tianara one. So there it is. Easy peasy. And then this one I just use for the background. So all I did was use standard brushes. I just scribbled basically, you know, the tree, the foliage, yada yada yada. No AI anywhere in sight. It's not the greatest background in the world, but the thing is, it's Tia you're looking at. You're not looking at the background, you know. Bottom line is it feels good. The shot feels good. I did add, therefore, a blur over the whole background to just defocus it a little bit. Number one. And this one, I did add the rim effect again. That's pretty much it. That brings us up to today. Poof. So I already saved it with the changes. So, all right. So now we assume she's walking through the creek, through the woods from the creek, and she comes back, and he notices her. So then we're going to have to think about, from a storytelling standpoint, rolling back about a half an hour here. I mentioned earlier, you got Tianara. Approaching the cave, wearing the sweatshirt she had on last night, but she doesn't have the bottoms on. It drops below her crotch, so her goodies aren't being, displayed or anything like that. But she just, her legs, you can see her knees, for crying out loud. So obviously Mel, as a 15-year-old boy, is a little bit, whoa, what was that just went by? Okay. I might be over-explaining the sexual innuendo here, but I think it should be pretty obvious to everybody. Okay, so from a strictly pencil test standpoint, there is a pretty good flaw here we should address immediately. And by the way, turn that off again and save it. Okay, which is what? Well, you guys have probably noticed that if I do a pencil test, and then in my head I know what I'm going to be doing, or what's going to be in a later frame or whatever, so I don't completely draw it out, I almost always regret that. It gets to ink and paint time, and all of a sudden I'm having to make creative decisions and design or drawing decisions that I really should not be making at that point. Those decisions should have all been made at the pencil test. So when I see that type of deficiency, I want to just go ahead and address it. All right? What does that mean? Well, finish drawing this stuff. Now, Mel, I probably should check his costuming. I probably should check his costume. Here we go. So, yeah. See? Dave, are you serious, dude? Come on. Okay, so this is... I am hopeless when it comes to this continuity, man. How do I suck this bad? But I do. Okay. So you might want to put the right clothes on the character. Yeah, that would be good. Okay, so there's that. So now, the only thing to do is, the only appropriate thing to do is go through and delete all those turtlenecks. Just get them out of there. Yep, so they're not distracting me. Whoops, this is supposed to be erasing. Control. So my bad. My bad. I am a costuming disaster. Continuity is not my strong suit, it would appear. And I don't want to be distracted by this in any way. That might sound crazy to some people, who, especially if you haven't done it or experienced it. But what happens is, whatever's in the shot, remember what I said earlier about AI, about the idea of, if I have a creative problem to solve, if there's somebody I can interact with who might not have the greatest ideas in the world, but their ideas spawn new ideas for me. So it's a very helpful thing. This is the same thing in reverse. When that turtleneck is in the shot, it's being planted in my mind, whether I want it to or not, because it's there. I can see it. And when I see it, I feel things about the character and the movement and the motion. And the problem is, because you've got an erroneous item in the shot, in the drawing, your brain is spawning off in creative directions that are invalid, that are not going to work later, because your entire creative framework with which to draw upon creatively is being seeded with the wrong information. So I know that sounds kind of wacky, but it's true. This is how it works. And so the thing to do is get it the hell out of there completely. Just get it gone. And let's continue with material that we definitely know should be in the scene, and we're not causing ourselves, you know, creative problems for no good reason. If you're a newbie animator and you are wondering about technique, for me, I often will, if I know my destination, so I know I'm going to get from here to here. Okay? If I know my destination, then I'll needle in really close on one thing. Like that. And actually start kind of animating bits one by one to make it work. Okay, so if that's going to be there, you see what I mean? So kind of working in reverse. I think that jump right there is a little extreme, frankly. Probably you guys are screaming at the screen right now. Dave, seriously? That's like a big jump on that last frame. Okay. So let's go to the D key and just, yep. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, let's go back here. Okay. This part's kind of important. Once he stretches, I want to have him stretch. I don't know. Let's just do this and see what it's going to look like. I'm actually curious here. We'll do 2, 3, 4. Not bad. I mean, that's probably okay. I don't need those frames to be in there since obviously they're just going to be copies of one another. But yeah, that feels pretty good, right? Man, we got 8 viewers. Hey, Chiziapo. Okay, I want to look at what the last couple things Amar said. Once you customize any brush to save it, you should dupe it so it works how you wish. Okay, this includes the renaming of the brush. Okay, I didn't do that, and I probably should have. We can test this right now. Here's how. Let's create a new scene. There's the pencil test. It's a little strange because I'm not quite sure how my pencil test color got modified. Because it's a little, I don't know, is this even the right, yeah, that's the right pencil. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The color of the pencil test doesn't matter that much. Okay, so then the question is, when I go to shift to ink, do things actually operate the way I expect? Let's find out. Well, that's the curve I created. So my suspicion vis-a-vis Amar's comment is probably this. If I load my startup file, which I always do when I create a new scene, and the modifications to that brush are baked into the scene, then the brush will behave going forward as I expect. However, if I were to be in some completely different scene or whatever and access this brush, and Amar, if you're around and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I'm suspecting is going on. If I access any of these brushes later, fresh, if you will, not the version that's baked into my startup file, then probably all of my changes to the brush will disappear and it'll be back to the default way the brush was when it was created. If anyone wants to say, yes, that's how it works, or no, you're completely wrong, feel free to let me know. Okay, let's get back to work. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So this is all fine. Yep, now we got to just punch up the pencil test. Okay, cool. So normally we sort of make this horseshoe shape here, and then this little divot thing in his shirt. Poof, 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 poof. I'm kind of letting it be pulled apart a little bit as he stretches. That's probably appropriate. Here we should probably make sure that color is in there. Meaning the color of the collar. I'm getting into a little bizarre wordplay here, I guess, but okay. Golly, this should be basically this, and then I think I'm probably safe to assume that's okay, because by the time I get to when I ink this, I'm going to be drawing this pose right here, and then these are all going to be just animated copies all the way to here. So at this point I think that's okay. All right, so this, you know, catching the thickness of this bit probably belongs more like there, there, there. Okay. Okay, now the shirt's getting squunched a bit, right? Because he's raising those shoulders up. Okay, and then we basically want to just kind of smooth this out a little bit. Okay, that's right there, there, there. Cool. Okay. Okay, same thing over here. Actually, let's go to the front view, zoom out a bit, and flip it, because I'm not able to see what I'm doing because of my stylus is actually in the way. This is where a standard tablet actually is kind of better. A standard tablet, the stylus never actually gets in your way where you can't see what you're doing. Okay, cool. Poof. Okay. And then remember, it's going to be right. Oopsie. Stop everything. Undo. Undo. What just happened? Oh, I was on frame 15 instead of 16. All right. Anything going on out there in the world, guys? Let's go this. Okay. So now Mel. This all goes by pretty quickly, so we kind of have a lot of latitude as far as the look and the motion of it. Little bit of latitude. Mel's a fairly skinny guy. He's no total slouch or anything, but he's definitely on the skinny side. Boo-doo-boo-boo-doo-boo. If something doesn't feel right, just freaking erase it and draw it again. It only takes a moment. Okay. As you already have it, you already have it back then, but the idea is so you know which brush you created and you can identify. Oh, well, that's fair. I did it. Yeah, got it. Now, what I did was I was deliberately wanting to only work with pencil and ink pen. Just simple. And then airbrush is kind of useful sometimes too, obviously in Blender, but I'm trying to pretty much relegate it to just a very couple brushes that are what I'm using almost all the time. Now, if I'm getting into a background painting and I want to use all the fancy schmancy foliage brushes or whatever, that's fine. Okay, so the idea is kind of like you're trying to really stretch him out. Now he's got these armbands that he always wears, obviously. And my thought was, for this pose, his hand would be sort of bent back. And of course he has his wristbands too. Okay, this would be an example where certainly it probably makes a lot of sense to do this. Control C. Okay. Control V. Yeah, let's kind of put the anchor right there. And the other thing I'm going to do on this one is grab this, turn on the proportional editing, and then we want to have a fairly large range. What I'm trying to do is literally bend his hand back, bend his arm back. Okay, poof. Let's just look at that. Okay, that'll work. Control C. Right, because it would basically be stupid to draw this over and over and over for something like that. Sorry, having to think. Okay, stop. Alt A. Let's only grab half of it. The anchor point is still here. That's still too much, actually. I don't know if this is quite going to work, but I'm going to keep trying. Rotate. That's probably good. Back to draw mode. Okay, now the question becomes, turn off proportional editing. Actually, edit mode. Something strange is going on. I'm going to hit save. Okay. Let's go to edit mode. Okay, so Alt A. And proportional editing off. So now the question is, let's go scale X -1. Go. Oh, come on. Scale X -1. I'm sorry, I have to hit enter and then hit the G key. Rotate this back to there. Control C. Control. Okay, alright, undo. Okay, now the reason I'm annoyed, and I certainly am, is because I just hit Control C, which should mean I'm now cutting these to the clipboard. So when I go back here and hit Control V, there we go, that's better. Okay, so that's fine. Actually, this one, I think I want to actually roll it down a little bit. Let me see. It's close. Rotate back up. Yep, there we go. Okay, and Control V. This one should be down further. And now we're back to drawing. Boom, boom, boom. So I'm driving, and the words may not come as brushes you made. Yeah, we don't have to get too hung up on it. I just wanted to make a change to one brush so that it, when it's inking time, it basically behaves more the way I would be preferring. But if there's anybody out here watching, oopsie, and you want to create your own brushes in Blender, then maybe that's helpful information. Poof. Okay, let's go back here. This is okay. Okay. Oh boy, that does look good. This all crunching together like that is fine. That's very natural. Okay. Okay, so I don't, will this work or be a problem? I'm not quite sure actually yet. I'm not sure, friends. Get it? Okay, so this can all be left because it's just going to be, they're just copies of the earlier frames. Now this is this, like literally, this is this. So again, copies, copies, copies. And then that's a tween. This drawing needs to be good. So the only thing I want to check is this. Got it. Something like that. What time is it? 10:35? Okay. Doing okay. Man, I tell you, I mentioned earlier today that I was really pleased to find that Blender's SVG import of grease pencil is just flawless. That's somewhat important because I've got a job I'm doing for a client that involves a cartoon character that's basically an icon or mascot associated with an app, like an iPhone or Android app. And pretty sure they're going to want SVG. Now, what I don't know, some of the bits will be animated, and I don't know if they're going to want animated SVG or if for the stuff that's animated, maybe just like an animated GIF will do the trick. Because one of them's like a progress bar concept. You've got this character that's moving around on the screen in such a way as to suggest that we're waiting patiently. So it's basically a variation on the old progress bar idea. Can that just be a GIF? Probably, But when you're dealing with clients, you need to make sure everyone understands what we're doing. And then I've got another client where I'm going to be doing significant work on their website. And honestly, I got to the end of the day yesterday and I said, between the gigs I have and the cartoon, this show, I got enough to keep me busy probably through 2026 at this point. And I'm not even joking. Pretty crazy. Okay, the only thing I'm not liking is something about this whole shape seems kind of forced to me. Doesn't feel... Stop. Stop. How did I go back one frame? I'm not sure. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm not really sure what I just did. And then he goes bloop. Okay, yeah. So this is the frame I wanted to focus on. Make this a little looser, a little smoother. I can then go in and do some erasing to get rid of the erroneous lines. But yeah, that's probably about right. There we go. There we go. All right, do we want to see what it looks like in the show? I think so. Because all we got to do now is ink and paint and background. Save. Well, let's go here. This is definitely not going to be temp. One thing I noticed, just so you guys know, if you put in // because you want to use a relative path for your output, I have bad news for you. The relative path is not relative to the Blender file. If it was, I could put period / render / and then the name of the files I want to render, and it would create the folder inside of where my Blender file is stored, and we'd be on our way. Unfortunately, the dot doesn't represent the location of the Blender file. It represents the location of the Blender application, which is a little quirky. Now, if I got this right, I probably could bake it into all of my into my default setting or scene, so that I just have to change a little bit each time, which is basically the number associated with the file. If it all sounds like garbage, here's what I'm trying to say. First of all, let me check one thing real quick. That needs to be set to transparent since we're doing pings. Okay. In fact, let me stop right here for half a second. Save this. File, new, general. The fact that this is not set. It is set. It is set in the default. But I thought I started the scene that I was just working on with the default. So why would it not be set there? Not sure about that, but we won't belabor the problem. What we're going to do here is let's just see what happens if we go. Okay, that right there should represent the location of the Blender application, which is actually on the P drive. Can you climb up, switch to a different drive, and make that work? I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I'm probably pissing in the wind, as they say. I should just do it the hard way and go to episode 373. And then what we do is we always create a folder called render, which Blender then confirms is what we're wanting to do. And then we put 03-73 period. And then Blender's going to insert 0001, 0002, blah, blah, blah. But there's a catch. Now watch this closely. I accept that location. Look what Blender did. Blender has always done this, and I just want you to be aware of it. It took the period at the end of that file name and changed it to an underscore. This has been true going back to Blender 2.5. So replace it here with a period. And why, when I hit Control Spacebar now, wasn't wanting to switch back. Okay, let me see what we have here. Did it change? It's a little fuzzy for me. I think it. Anyway, the bottom line is you have to change the underscore to a period manually. Okay. Control F12. Come on, Blender. What's wrong with you today? I hit Control F12. Bloody nothing happens. If nothing happens, that can't be good. Sorry for those who are offended by my faux accent. I'm sure I must have offended somebody. Okay. Cool beans. Alright, so now what we're going to do is switch to Vegas. So there probably is a way to bake in a path in my Blender file that is relative to the Blender application and even includes a drive letter change. There probably is. I don't know what that would look like. Because you keep going, like if the Blender application is in a file called Blender on the which is in a folder called apps, which is on the P drive, then I would have to go ///. Okay, that gets me out to the apps folder. // which gets me out to the P drive, and now I don't know how to. Maybe if you went // now it's gone up to the computer in Windows. I seriously doubt that would work, because then you'd have to put L:/ anime / salt and light you know what I mean. It would be a mess, and at the end of the day it wouldn't work because you're trying to bake. So if anybody's a real like command line junkie, is there a way to deal with a relative path that does in fact include a drive change? // okay. Okay, can you give me an example of how you use // So are you saying the answer would be don't do the relative path with... See, with relative paths in Linux or Windows, dot means current location. That's where you are now, which relative to the Blender application would be the folder that the actual Blender exe resides in. Okay? I think what Amar is saying is what you do is you go you wouldn't do dot at all. You're not going to use a relative path that you climb up out of and then down into another path. You can do that, and it works perfectly well on a single drive. Are you saying that // actually allows you to indicate a different drive? And if so, is there any necessity to do the climbing up and out with the // thing, followed by // That's probably completely unnecessary. It would be //L:/ well, I guess we would see it here, wouldn't we? Yeah. Anyway, the obviously simplest solution to all of this is simply to say, look, come on. God, you click one wrong thing and everything goes bleh. The simple thing is just to use this path, right? And then just leave the file name blank and change that with every new shot. Obviously, that's what you'd want to do. So anyway, enough of that fun. Let's go to Vegas and hop up here. Click right there. Let's grab the 0373 render. Everything is where it's supposed to be. That's cool. This is at 8 frames per second. Alright, so now we gotta find the image sequence. There it is. There it is, people. There it is. Add the disable resample, which I'm not going to explain right now. I've only explained it 800 trillion times at different times. Let's just see what we have. Tweet, 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 birds chirping. Ah, beautiful morning. Tia grabs her clothes. And then it cuts to Mel coming out of the cave. Stretch. I like what I see. And I mean, we're up to 16 seconds in the last 2 days. Not great, but not horrible. Not great, but not horrible. I've been learning so freaking much. Just getting the Blender workflow dialed in that I'll bet you this version of the ink pen is going to be wrong. Nope, it is correct. Okay. Couldn't remember when I saved the defaults. Okay, so what was the thing we were looking at here? We were looking at active smooth. This is wrong. I'll bet you this is correct in the default, like for new scenes I create, so I saved the curve into it, but I didn't save this. This needs to be 0.2. Might as well save this scene. File save. Okay. Now, I'm going to draw and watch what happens. Okay, it didn't all disappear, so, here's why. Auto keying is turned on. Silly me. I am so freaking silly. Okay, we want no post-processing because we do have active smoothing at 0.2. So no post-processing. It's too much of a good thing in terms of like the smoothing and whatnot. Okay, so now the sketch layer should be turned down. Just enough to see what the heck we're doing. And this drawing needs to be, you know, probably a pretty good drawing. You know why? Because it's going to be repeated like umpteen times. Right. Okay, I do like the way this brush feels. Probably a little more smoothing would be okay. But, you know, we can always hit the... I don't like what I did there. Once I turned on the stabilizer. So I'm repeatedly trying to say, we can always turn on the stabilizer, but for some reason I can't get the freaking words out of my mouth. That's too thick of a neck. He is not like one of these bulldog athlete type guys. He's more like I was in high school, which means skinny, basically. Okay, that was okay, but a little bit thick at the end. Just a little bit of wrinklage. Do I have... I should probably have this. Oh, okay, now I'm trying to think. Amar would know. There's a setting. I wonder... let me check something. I know this sounds ridiculous. It is this. Yes, it's that. If I turn transparent back off, I actually can see the background here. So... I only want to do that because I have noticed when I was having issues the other day, it basically boiled down to everything looked great in solid mode, but then when I went to fully rendered mode, there was some weirdness and artifacting that I did not expect. And so, generally speaking, I'm trying to favor just being in EV full rendered mode most of the time. Okay. Now, for our purposes, probably should extend this a little bit. We'll just put that there. Okay, so that's a closed shape now, and presumably that would be a closed shape. Okay. So now what did we do before? Well, what we did was we went to here. We went to here. And so let's go into edit mode. Go to here. And then what we did was we had a pose in the middle. Let's just follow that. Follow that. Okay. So there's an up, then a down, up, down. And then what I did, oh boy. Actually, you know what? Let's do it this way, you guys. It's always a dance. It's a bit of a dance between having everything kind of baked together versus not. But in this case, let's face it. It's kind of stupid to do all this interpolation and not have the color baked in. I'm going to do something radical. First of all, I'm going to move the sketch layer to the very bottom of the stack and turn it off. So the radical thing I'm going to do, and I don't want onion skins turned on here, is I'm going to try just this one time, I'm going to try doing the fill operations in the same layer in draw strokes on back mode. I'm going to bake the color in on these frames. I'm almost surely going to regret it, and that would mean putting them on this layer. I'm almost surely going to regret it. I'm sure this is going to bite me in the hiney. So I can't not do it. I have to try. So we can just pick a material. Doesn't matter what the materials are because we're going to be changing all the colors here in just a second anyway. So that's going to be a fill color. There it is. Okay. Now we'll just change all the colors to kind of sort of what they're supposed to be. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Stop that. This needs to be kind of a mid-range purple. That looks really good. This is supposed to be kind of a mid-range-ish skin situation. He's basically Caucasian. These are green. And, yep, I like that. This is actually supposed to be like a light blue bordering on aqua. Can't believe I nailed it on the first try right there. It looks like I pretty much did. So let's go here and just make this a little darker. I can always amend it later. But, okay, so now the question becomes, here's a crazy question. We're drawing strokes on back. So this means, let me just think about this for a minute. Just to be safe, I'm going to do the fixies this way. I don't care that this is really the wrong color. I don't believe that that's something the audience is ever going to notice. Obviously, I could be more meticulous and choose the correct color for these details, but at render size, I just don't think it matters. This little bit here kind of might. Okay? Now, so here's the thing. Wherever you save the file, all you have to do in the render area is put // and it's in the folder name, and it should actually create the folder. Okay, Amar, here's the thing. Are you saying that / is, that denotes a location equivalent to the location of the blend file? Yes or no? Is that in fact the case? Does / mean location of blend file? If the answer is yes, then the answer would be / render / file name dot, and then Blender adds the 4 digits and dot ping to the end of it. That's what you would have. So in the normal case, what would be baked into the default Blender file would be / render that, and then probably, truthfully, it would probably be something like 03 dash. Okay, I know this sounds a little crazy, but that is probably what would be baked into my default file. And then when I create a new file, this is because I'm being a little more controlling over how Blender names things. And then what I would do is that when I create a new project, I would add the file name and period. So within the Blender file, I would add that. And so then render 03-75 dot would be what's in the specific blend file. And then what Blender would do is add the letters and the digits. And so everything would wind up getting rendered to this location. 03-75 dot 0023, let's say, dot paying. That's what Blender would save. Of course, this would be 0001, 0002, etc. So, Amar, my question is my understanding correct? The most important thing is, does // refer to the location of the blend file? Okay, we'll keep moving on. Okay, so now if you're a smart person, and I know you guys are, you're saying what I just did was probably pretty stupid because, what about the shadows? We don't really have a way to mask the shadows. And we're really not sure that they're going to render correctly if we use the shadow-filled material. Well, it probably will because it doesn't have a stroke. If that doesn't make sense, I'm not surprised. Don't worry about it. So we would want to not be in behind mode. And then we would want to just do this carefully. Do what carefully, you say? Something like this. Okay, and stop everything because that material is way too light. More like that, probably. Okay? And the main challenge here is if you make even one mistake, like I cannot edit this, like sculpt it, because it's going to move. I mean, there probably actually is a way to limit sculpting to a given material. Hey, Mar. We keep leaning on you, man, but I'm wondering, actually, is that a thing? I don't know. Can you limit sculpting to one material as opposed to, say, one layer, that type of thing? If you can, then this is fairly simple. But basically what I'm saying is the way I'm doing this by baking it all into one layer, which I almost always regret eventually, just saying. But by doing it this way, it theoretically and potentially makes it easier to do the stuff I have to do later. All the copying of keys and all that. The catch is that I have to be way more careful here because I don't have masking helping me out. Okay? So now all of that, the shadows and everything are all baked into just that one key right there. Now I can do what I said earlier. Poof. And I'm not saying I'm going to continue this way through the whole shot. I may not. Okay? And by the way, I guess, golly, here's the thing. A lot of people would also say, just use animation keys. I don't have to bake this walk into the grease pencil. It's probably, there's reasons why it's arguably a bad idea, actually. What I could do is parent the layer to an empty and just animate that. I'm going to demonstrate it now just because there's probably people who don't know what I'm even talking about. Okay, so I've got this drawing of the character with the color and the shadows. Everything's baked into one layer. It wouldn't have to be, and frankly, it probably shouldn't be. But I did it. Call me a sinner. Fine. Okay, so I need to animate him to here, and the way I've been doing that, following the pencil test, is just go into edit mode, select all the grease pencil keys, and move them. That's perfectly fine. And then keep moving them to these different positions, and then do what I did here, which is interpolate between every other key. So Blender just figures out what the new positions are supposed to be based on where I move things. But we don't have to do it that way. What we could do is the following. Go into object mode, and let's add an empty into the scene. Plane axis is probably not the worst idea in the world. I'm going to grab that plane axis and put it down here. Actually, I'll put it right here so you can kind of see it behind Mel. All right, that's all I needed to do there. Now I grab this, which is the grease pencil object, presumably. No. This is the thing I got to tell you guys. Hey, Doggy Dude, and Jay, thanks for saying hello, guys. It is definitely the case that just selecting stuff if I put a lasso around the grease pencil strokes, then it also selects the empty, which is not what I wanted to do. So I guess I just need to get out of lasso mode. It's too bad. I like to be in lasso mode almost all the time. Click. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is in the grease pencil, it's very simple. We're going to take this layer and we're going to do a relation. We're going to make the parent the empty. Okay, that's it. That's the whole story. Now, here's one of the problems you run into working this way, and it's an important one. It's not a big deal, but it is something to be aware of. Since I'm working in object mode, I almost have to have 2 dope sheets on the screen because this one's going to show what's going on with the empty, and this one is going to show what's going on with the grease pencil. So you almost need 2 dope sheets. There's a way around it, and that would be this. First of all, I'm going to grab the empty, and I'm doing this, by the way, just parenthetically. This is an exercise in doing stuff that's a little tricky and difficult. Why not? Let's try. Let's see if we can make it work. Okay. First thing is I don't want auto keying on, because if auto keying is on, every time I move the empty, it's going to set keys for scale, rotation, everything in sight. That's not what I want. So I'm turning auto keying off, and I'm going to insert only a location key. Okay? All right, so now this is interesting. We're in object mode, and I inserted a key just now. Let me check something here. Grease pencil, dope sheet. Ha! I'm a little bit baffled here. Let's do that again. Oh, there it is. Why? I must not have had it selected or something. Okay. So now here's the way I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this the stupidest way possible. In the grease pencil, I can see that the final destination is here on frame 7. Now I'm switching back to the dope sheet, and I'm simply taking this and saying, okay, let's go to here. And then we have to manually insert another location key. Okay? All right, so now we go forward 2 frames. Hit the G key, move it here. Obviously, insert a location. Go forward 2 frames. And I'm going to actually hit the G key and really make sure I've got this in the right place, because it might not be exactly perfect. Insert a location key. Okay, so now one of the things this is kind of nice, does for me. Okay, everything worked perfectly. Are there any problems, regrets, etc., etc.? Well, here's the thing. One aspect of it that's interesting now is that you might say, like right here. Gosh, this is really getting into shaky territory probably, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm feeling frisky. I'm going to actually raise his shoulders up slightly there. This is where you can get into all kinds of nuance. We can actually start using squash and stretch throughout in creative ways that potentially give a little more life to the performance. It might also make it look stupid and we'll regret it. Okay, now here in the pencil test, this was actually where his shoulders slumped. And so we're doing the same thing with the whole kit and caboodle on the grease pencil. All right, so let's go into draw mode. And let's see what we have. Okay, did those... Okay, so that's interesting. Not dope sheet, I want grease pencil. I'm looking at... Ah, how amazingly dumb. How amazingly dumb, but there it is. Okay, my bad, guys. Okay, when you're jumping between modes because you're trying to give yourself flexibility later by using animation tools like I'm doing, etc., etc., you do run the risk of... It's just the same old story. Everything you gain in flexibility, you lose in terms of there's more things you got to keep track of or jump between in order to stay focused and coordinated. In this case, what happened was all of the sculpting that I did on Mel simply was baked into the initial frame because I had turned auto keying off. So, not a big deal. I just have to do it over now. And so let's just try. Let's see what we can do. We're going forward 2 frames. So the assumption would be this is going to push up a little bit, and then we go back here, it's going to drag a little bit. Now it's going to push up a little bit, and then recoil. I'm just playing with squash and stretch here, guys. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. Okay? Poof. And now we got this going on, and because auto keying is on, Blender will remember this time. Okay? And he's just kind of falling because it's very early in the morning and he's pretty tired and it's been a long night. You know, fleeing for your life and all that can be a bit annoying. That looks gorgeous. That looks absolutely gorgeous as far as the animation goes. Doesn't that feel good? That feels good. Ploof, ploof, ploof. That's perfect. Okay, so does this present any problems? Yeah, it presents one problem. Right here, probably what I should do is on the lines layer, I should change its name to shot 1 because we've got multiple shots within a scene. And what I should do is insert, I key, insert a blank keyframe, and just switch to another layer because I don't want the next layer to be parented to this empty. And indeed, for my purposes now, I might as well take this, and if we go Shift F9 and go to the outliner, honestly, at this point, why do we need to see this? We don't need that empty to be seen. Yes, I will in fact forget that it exists later, and it might cause me some trouble, but for now, you guys get my point. Okay, so now back to here, and we'll call this, for lack of a better idea, for now, we'll call this shot 02. And by the way, this really, if I'm going to be consistent with my naming convention, this really should be shot -01. Okay. So, the sketch layer is still on the soft side. I hit the D key. And now let's just take a look at this for half a second. We've got a drawing that in fact was sculpt. Okay, yes. And by the way, look at this. This should probably have 1 frame of lead in. So let me draw this. Let me get the drawing part happening, and then I will clarify. We don't want to use the shadow layer. We want charcoal ink. And now let's rock and roll. So his eyes are obviously... Okay, stop everything. Okay, interesting. What's going on here? Okay, this is where... Hands are out. Hands are out. So it's like Doggy Dude and Jay Hansen seem to know each other. You're a good artist. Maybe collaborate with Randomize or Ozone Tube HD. If that question was for me, Jay, I have no idea who any of those are. I don't know. I'm probably you're probably not even talking to me. Anyway, here's the question. Here's what I'm trying to figure out right now. I don't have any modifiers on the Blender Grease Pencil object muddying the waters. Here's what I've noticed, guys. Actually, I'm kind of thinking this out loud to myself. Let me check one thing here. Add and replace versus replace. We'll leave that as is. Here's what I think might be going on. In this layer, the significant point is here, I draw a bunch of stuff, and then it immediately disappears. Now, that's weird. Why is that dot there? That's really interesting. It's almost like it's being, it's very strange. Okay, so when I use auto keying, let's see what happens if we go to here now. This actually just changed. It's like there's something, it's drawing at the origin. It's almost like it's translating it somewhere, but it's not. That's right on the origin. That is really, really strange. So whatever's happening with auto keying, it's a new layer, and I use auto keying, and the lines just disappear, and it's a mystery. Okay, stop, undo. No, wait a second. Shot 2. Why is shot 2 not showing up now? I don't know what to do except hit undo a couple times. Okay, let's leave it there. So here's what I'm coming around to. What I'm coming around to is that when I have a new layer, if I manually insert one blank keyframe, I believe that eliminates this weirdness with auto keying, which seems to only show up when it's the first frame, and then everything after that doesn't seem to work. I'll bet you this line is going to stay on the screen. Let's see. Nope, it's still doing the same thing. It takes what I drew, and it all gets reduced to this dot. That is really weird. And that dot does not appear to be able to be really erased. Okay. It is being drawn at the absolute origin. But why is it collapsing them? It's like it's taking the strokes I drew and it's collapsing them down as small as it can. Anybody have any idea? Kind of snap to feature? I mean, nothing. I don't know, man. And the weird part is you can't erase them. Okay, let's try. Let's see. Let's jump into. By all appearances, they do seem to be selectable. But Go does nothing. Scale does nothing. If we delete the points, they seem to get deleted. So I have been I gotta say, with Blender 293, I've bumped into something like this multiple times. It is very strange. And it always happens after there's something about the layers that's changed. In this case, what would that change be? It would be that this particular layer is parented to a bone. In other examples, it's been because either there was a modifier on a layer or there was effect on the whole Blender. I don't think the effects have caused this. But when there's a modifier, like time offset, for example, if there's a modifier, or in this case, I don't know if it's the same problem, but we have a parenting situation. Parented to a bone. Is that what's causing weirdness in another layer? I just have no idea. It is really, really obscure and strange. When there's no, and the other thing is, if I create the grease pencil stuff, get the whole shot done, and then add the modifiers, then I don't, if it's already there, it doesn't cause a problem. So there's something strange going on with modifiers. And the way it does look like what you said there, Tom. It looks like it's putting all the points in a single location. Very strange. Let's see, just for kicks and giggles, if we switch to the Tia layer, which is where this silhouette was. Okay. Why don't we see the Tia layer anymore? Now, do you notice right there? Thought I saw that orange dot in the center jump around. Maybe not. Okay, I think the easiest solution to all of this for now is let's just break this relationship. We'll kill it. Okay, so all that means is that Mel's not going to move around. He's just going to stay in one place. That's okay. So we've gotten rid of anything that makes anything about this whole scene unusual in terms of modifying the grease pencil layers. Now if we go to shot 2, is it going to still do the same thing? I guess it might be good to be in drawing mode. There you go. Look at that. Okay, that's okay. What I'll do is I'll just say we'll just go to here and continue forward. In fact, what I'll do is let's do it this way. We can really test this. Okay, look at our lines are there, so everything's working. We kill this. This looks fine, and now let's go back and reattach this relation. I see the problem. Guys, do you see it? I see the problem. I totally see the problem. And now I probably will never make this mistake again. There's the problem right there. See, the strokes disappeared, and it's because this is parented to the object, and it needs to be well, it's parented to an object, but view layer. Maybe I don't have the ability. Gosh, this was a lot simpler in Blender 2.79. There was an option to just tell you what layer you were parenting it to, and it appears to me that Blender 2.93, for whatever bizarre reason, has removed that possibility. You're either, golly, it's acting like the grease pencil effects, which grease pencil effects can only be applied to the whole grease pencil object. If you want to have a blur, you can't limit it to one layer, not in Blender 2.93 anyway. So this is definitely a problem. This did not used to be an issue. I'm going to actually take a moment and show you guys what I'm talking about, because this is actually a real thing. Let's, just for now, let's kill Blender. Oh, come on. Blender, get out of my face so I can do this. All right. I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. Blender 2.79. Let's just take a material. Let's draw a shape. Okay, let's take a material, I said. Let's draw a shape. Thank you. Okay, let's take another material on another layer. Let's draw a shape. Okay, and then what we do is we simply add an empty to the scene. Plane axis. We'll shrink the empty down. Are we in object mode? Let's see. It's been so long now since I've been in Blender 2.79 that it's confusing. So I'm going to shrink this guy down, move it down here. Now watch this. Watch the following. Okay. And forgive me, guys. Just forgive me because I'm really moving slow here because I forgot some stuff. Okay. So this layer, okay, and I'm going to just get rid of all other layers so that it's not confusing for me or you. So I'm just desperately trying to find the layer that I'm actually trying to work with here. Okay, there it is. Okay, take this sketch layer. Look, if we parent it to the empty, it only affects that layer. Simple, right? It's simple, intuitive, brain dead. Of course, you parented it to the empty, and it only has object mode, but it does relegate it to a single layer, which makes perfect sense. So I'm showing this so if anybody has any insight, let me know. How that worked was really simple and intuitive. In Blender 2.93, we might be looking at one of these trade-offs where we gain some flexibility in how things are parented and whatnot in exchange for more fiddliness and things that don't quite work the way they're supposed to, yada, yada, yada. That does appear to be what's going on here. Because these layers are not parented to the bone, are they? Only this one is. Yet, all of these other layers are being transformed. What does this mean? Only include layer in this view layer render output. Leave blank to include always. Okay, that wouldn't have anything to do with what we're dealing with here. So this once I reparented it, now he's moving, but he's offset. So things are getting actually worse and uglier than, unfortunately, I expected. So it's unfortunate that you guys have to watch this because it's a bit difficult. This should not be here. This should be initially offset to its proper location. And this is not going to work. Just be very aware this is almost surely not going to work. See? That doesn't work because the only way you can make this work if there's an obscure... This is obviously a bug in Blender. This cannot be anything but a bug in Blender. This grease pencil layer was mapped to this empty, and it followed it perfectly, and everything worked just fine. I disconnect the Blender layer from the empty, then reconnect it, and now all of a sudden there's this offset. The only way you'd be able to fix that is to add another empty, parent the first empty to the second empty, and use the second empty to create an offset, which now you're getting into the weeds. You're getting, hey Magnus, or Max Magnus, way into the weeds. Okay, so here's the deal, guys. The bottom line is this empty has to go. It's unfortunate. I'm a little bummed to discover this, but it looks to me like in Blender 2.93, the grease pencil, come on Dave, really dude? The grease pencil parenting to empties and whatnot, at least at this moment, appears to be bordering on a non-starter. Now maybe if a whole grease pencil object's parented to something, that might be different. But think about this for a minute. That's stupid. You know why? If I'm going to translate the grease pencil object around, then there's absolutely no reason to parent it to an empty because you can just translate the grease pencil object. So the only way this all works nicely, in all likelihood, is I break this layer off into its own grease pencil object, which is pretty clunky. I don't think I want to go there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of do this the hard way and see if we can salvage this situation. End of story. So I'm going to take this, move it. Okay, stop. Stop. We need to... wait a second. Why is the hair not moving? It's all in one layer. Oh, golly. I'm getting increasingly freaked out here. This is getting weird. Very weird. But okay. Okay. Hit the A key so all is selected. That should do the trick. Why the heck it wasn't all selected before is a bit baffling. Okay. Wait. We have a problem. We have a problem in that the animation, we got to go forward one frame at a time. Okay. All we're doing is creating offsets here. A key. Go. And did that do it? Yes. Oh, come on. I have to keep hitting A to select all. I'm not going to rant today. But you know, it is disappointing when it's like, wow, this is just fun, and then nope, nope. There's a bunch of bugs you didn't know about, and you didn't happen to bump into them till now, and all of a sudden you find out that what was going to be nothing but fun is pretty fun, but it's also fraught with a bunch of difficulties that weren't there in the last version or whatever. It's just, this is just the way it is, guys. It's just always the way it is with software. Every bit of good news comes with a new piece of bad news, and it just is the nature of the beast. So you just learn to cope with it. Cope, my friends. But yeah, everything I'm doing now absolutely should not even be slightly necessary at all. Not even close, but there it is. But yet, that's what we have to do. The good news is it takes about, 1 minute to fix. Maybe 2. But yeah, I'm not shocked, but I am a little disappointed. This should have been a matter of, it's just so cool and easy. We parent the layer to an empty, just like we did for the last 15 years. It's always worked. And now it turns out, well, not so much. You get a little bit of a nasty surprise. Anyway, okay, so now there's no reason to have this layer in the shot at all. Might as well get rid of it. Get rid of it. I guess it'd be the minus key. Okay, so what's going on? It happens. I'm not in a rush. The kinks in the workflow. Very, very good. Very, very good. Okay, so one thing I want to change right now while I'm thinking about it. Let's save our work, and let's go in here to the overlays and edit lines. I don't need them in there. They only make things difficult to see. Okay, that's fine. So we're good. We're back in business now. And I would not expect for any reason that this is going to be problematic. So let's keep rocking. Okay, so what it appears to me, the lesson here today would be that, at least in 293, the grease pencil, generally you want to work with the grease pencil within the domain of the grease pencil. In other words, you want to move things around and interpolate and basically bake in changes, unless you're going to do stuff at the grease pencil object level, and it's going to affect the entire grease pencil object, and you're treating it as a, if you got more stuff in the scene, you actually you add completely new grease pencil objects to do that, because the relationship of things like empties or modifiers with the grease pencil object seems to be somewhat buggy, in the sense that things that are supposed to be easily applied only to one layer routinely are not. That seems to be the big gremlin with Blender 2.93 so far that I've seen. It's not a big problem. You can work around it by simply create a new grease pencil object, get over it. It's not a big deal. A little disappointing, but not a big deal. All right, I'm going to go with the stabilizer on this line. Pshoo. Okay, we might as well make sure we get it. But I mean, this has never not been the case. This is the point I was making the other day, was that if there's a problem, the one thing you would never want to say to me is, well, why don't you just use Blender 3 or Blender 4? And I have a very good reason. And the reason is this: that at the time that Blender 2.93 came out, it was the new version. It was ostensibly ready to use in the real world. It went through a beta cycle and blah, 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 blah. Okay. And it's wonderful, but it does have its quirks, right? We can all agree on that. Well, here's the thing. in a 20-year relationship with Blender, what I found is there's no such thing as a new release that doesn't have a bunch of quirks. Blender is and always has been at all stages of its development going back 25 years. Whatever's the new version is the version that has some issues. It's got some great capabilities, some of which are new, but it's got some issues as well. And some of those issues are like we were complaining with Krita the other day, or Krita, whereby what used to work, we get some new features, and now things that worked for possibly years all of a sudden don't work anymore. Okay? In the open source software space, that's the normal case. And you expect it. It's not a big deal because you expect it. In other words, every version of Blender is always, at all points in its entire history, has been the version which the next version is going to finally fix it and everything's going to work. It's always the next version that's going to be the good one. Not trying to say that with a jaundiced attitude. That is literally the way it's been for 25 years. And so if I'm having a little trouble in Blender 2.93 and somebody says, why don't you use version 3? Why don't you use version 4? The reason is because I have a 25-year history with Blender. And I know that there will be things that are better in version 3, and there's also going to be a bunch of things I'm going to bump into that are half finished and don't work or buggy. It's just normal. It's never, ever not been that way. So the idea that going from version 2.93 to anything else being a better experience is no. That's baloney. There's no way that'll happen. It'll be a different experience, but it won't be a better experience. Because for every good, there's going to be another bad. And for everything that's solved, there's going to be another bug to take its place. So what you look for, and it's why I'm running Krita 5.1.4 now. I'm not running 5.2.6 anymore. I'm running 5.1.4. Why? Because in the last 5 years, over the long haul, the most stable version of Krita that I've worked with was 5.1.4. So it was giving me so many problems the other day, I finally said, you know what, I quit. I'm going to go to, if I'm going to use Krita at all, I'm using 5.1.4. And so far it's been pretty smooth. Pretty smooth, my friends. And the only reason I make that point is sometimes you get newbies coming around and they'll say things like that. Hey bro, why don't you just use, how come you're not using 4.2? The people who say that, by definition, are the people that probably haven't, well, they haven't done this. They haven't created an actual show. You know what I'm saying? They haven't really worked through all the kinks. Now, maybe they have. I don't want to assume too much here. But the fact is they probably haven't. They're probably speaking from a place basically of ignorance. And, of course, that's their prerogative. But I don't tend to listen to it too much. Right? I just have too much experience with Blender. I just know how things go, I've told the story here many times of how, and again, this isn't a rant today. I'm just blabbing, right? I'm just blabbing while I work. But I love this story because it's true and it's so illustrative of what you bump into in the open source space at times. Is that when Blender 2.5 happened, everybody said it was going to make it was kind of like C++. It was like object-oriented programming in the 80s. When object-oriented programming became a thing, the promise of it was it's going to make us all more productive. It turns out everything that was ever a promise of C++ turned out to be false. It did not make people more productive. It'll be the same with AI. We're already finding that people who are AI assisted are actually less productive in many domains than people who aren't. Right? Every time I switch, you need to relearn the software. Yeah, pretty much. And when I got down to saying, okay, I'm going to really lean into it and rock and roll with Blender 2.8x, which then morphed into 9x, you have to do it with an attitude of, I'm expecting this to be a bumpy ride, and I'm going to get through it come hell or high water. That's really the attitude you have to have. And if you approach it that way, usually it turns out fine. It is a bumpy path, but it turns out fine. Okay, I see a little issue right there. So what was the crux of the story? The crux was with Blender 2.5, it was a radical change in the interface. And the promise was that you heard all the newbies talking about on the forums was how it's going to be so much more productive. And it's always cracked me up to look back and realize that to get from 2.5 to being actually pretty stable and productive took 10 years. And by the time they got there to Blender 2.79, 10 years, everything that everybody said about 2.8 was literally identical to what they were saying 10 years earlier about 2.5. Oh, it's going to be a streamlined interface. Oh, we're going to be so more productive. We all know what happened, don't we? It was great in many ways. I mean, it's a great product, a great tool, you know? But all of that is nonsense. There's no substitute for you go through the hard work of really working with the tool, bumping into all the bugs, finding the workarounds, and whatever the promise was never comes true. Never. I haven't seen it in my lifetime. The closest would be this, and it actually speaks to the C++ thing too. The closest would be this. The closest would be where you have a software tool, an application, and the basic functionality of that application, let's say it does half a dozen things pretty well. And the implementation of each of those capabilities resides in a dynamic link library that it's not necessarily object-oriented. You can be, but it doesn't need to be. And there's a clear separation of duties such that later when the software is updated, all they actually have to do is update the DLL, and you know, it makes maintenance and improvement much cleaner. If you combine all of this with the main application being driven by an interpreted language like Python or perhaps Lua, and the only stuff that's compiled in the program is the dynamic link libraries. So this stuff has to perform well. So this is compiled, but the main application is interpreted. So it makes it so the whole climate, it's like, yeah, you're going to have all kinds of bugs that show up, but they're fairly quick and easy to fix without completely disrupting the environment, you know, surrounding the use of the application or the installation thereof, right? Very few softwares historically are this way. Blender's kind of like this way in the sense that for the last 20 years-ish, 15 anyway, they've done a very good job of saying any new functionality that is included in Blender is immediately and automatically exposed in the Python API, which means if you're clever with Python, you can pretty much do anything with Blender. Because all of the capabilities of the program are exposed through the scripting interface, which is awesome. Blender is state-of-the-art in that regard. They're as good as any program I've ever seen. You know, it's absolutely fantastic. And by doing it well and documenting it well, what did Blender do? Blender fostered a vibrant add-on community, didn't they? The add-on community for Blender is extremely vibrant and creative. Comes up with a lot of good stuff. Well, that's because the Python API and its documentation is very clean and straightforward, and you got to do a little work, but you can do it. With Krita, they've exposed a tiny part of the interface to the API, and especially the animation aspects of Krita. Last time I checked, it's like they included it makes you feel like, God, they included everything except animation. Like the most important thing that needs help from the user community because there's so many bugs in the main program is the one part they didn't expose through the scripting interface, so you can't improve on it for them with add-ons. You know, and Tahoma's got the same problem where it's very limited in terms of, you know, Darren T. I saw a post or something he wrote about this, maybe on Discord, where he was saying, you know, the scripting capabilities in Tahoma 2D allow you to do a lot of interesting things, but understand up front it's not exhaustive, and you can't like do anything. You can't get too creative with expanding on the capabilities of the program. Basically, it's a macro facility. You know, nothing wrong with that. Okay, what do we want to do here? Well, I think probably what we want to do is expand this up. This should be shrunk. Okay, so we'll crunch these up. We're going to have to start drawing here in a minute. We're not going to be able to do tons of sculpting here. But on this one frame we can. Let me see. Let me make sure this isn't being too whacked out. Yeah, it's pretty whacked out. I got to fix it here. I could use the smooth tool, obviously. But it is one frame. Yeah, he's looking a little too bulky there. A little too bulky. Mel ain't that bulky, buddy. I had a crazy experience with my partner Valerie yesterday. You know what? You know what that was? We were just talking about stuff. It was like the stuff earlier where we were talking about these studies about diversity, inclusion, equity, as applied to decision making. And the thing is, she and I, we probably talked for 3 hours, and it was just like so cool, man, to have a partner that you can just sit and enjoy just shooting the shit with for 3 hours. That's amazing to me. It's a beautiful thing. Uh-oh. Is this gonna... Yep, it is. Whew. That's a little bit strong, though. I'm gonna go ahead and just put in a little fake mark to cue it to create a key. And I want to jump to here and maybe flip it. I feel like I'm at risk here of being a little overly sloppy in my drawing, which I kind of don't want to be. So yeah, now we're back into drawing again. This should be like that, probably like that. This is pretty loose and sketchy. It's very much for effect. And this is a one frame tween, keep in mind. So this is going to have to be colored green. Poof. So we'll see in a moment if this is working as well as I would hope. Okay, so the thing we have to look at is the next frame. Yeah, I mean, it's a one frame tween. I think we're okay. I think we're okay on this one. Okay, so for those who are new and don't know what I mean by a one frame tween, if you've got, the show is at 8 frames per second, okay? If we're moving into an action and we have one frame that we use to sort of set up that action by anticipating a little bit, my basic rule is you can get away with murder on a one frame tween because it's only on the screen for one frame. So you bleep over it so fast that if it's not really perfect, it just doesn't matter because your eye doesn't have time to digest the problem. And that's really it's a good thing to keep in mind with animation, because otherwise you wind up spending a lot of time massaging stuff that the audience was never going to notice or see in the first place. And that's a judgment call. Some people are a little more anal about such things. I tend to be pretty loosey-goosey about it. And I certainly haven't had any evidence from the audience that suggests that my personal approach is a problem, you know. Basically, people are watching Salt and Light and they must like it or it wouldn't be earning royalties, so that's just all there is to it. Let's go here. But I'm actually waiting right now for the fourth quarter royalty statement to see if it was as good as third quarter, because I mean, even if it wasn't, it's not like I'm going to go, well, okay, it was a fluke and we're going to quit working on Salt and Light. I'm pretty committed now to be rocking forward, and I'm doing my best to develop the workflow that's going to make it possible to crank out almost a minute a day. Well, maybe 30 seconds a day. If I could do, I mean, I know that's a crazy audacious goal, but if I could consistently deliver 30 seconds a day, I know that what I'm doing is so unusual that even if this show wasn't that great, there's many, I mean, it kind of opens the door to many other opportunities just because it's just a weird skill to be able to crank out animation that's suitable for an actual show at a rate of 30 seconds a day all by yourself is like unheard of. It's unheard of. And part of it, you see how his arm is bent there? Again, it's a one frame tween. You could argue that that's just squash and stretch. It's just stretching. It's not supposed to look right. It's supposed to look good. And if it looks good in the context of being in motion, then it is good. Let me show you what I mean by that. Here's the next frame. The next frame is going to be poof, 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 poof. Okay? Here's the next frame. So then watch what happens. Did you see the problem? Did you see it? You didn't see it. See how his arm's so bent? You don't see it. It's proop, proop. It's one frame. So just be aware of that. Now, could you make it better? Yeah, you can make it better. You could go like this and say, well, I mean, let's just be a little stricter. And okay. Point is, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do it, but it doesn't matter because humans aren't going to see it. Our brains just aren't that quick. Same thing with his hairline there. I just want to make sure I have closed shapes. I really don't care what it looks like because it's on the screen for one frame. It gets me from here to there. And that frame, however accurate or quote-unquote good it is, serves a very valuable purpose. The action would feel a lot different if that one frame was not in there. But it does not follow that the drawing of that frame needs to be particularly, let's call it, accurate. Okay, so now I'm using grease pencil tools to my advantage. Grease pencil tools is an add-on that gives me the ability to rotate the screen, among other things, but that's the main thing I find it's quite useful for. So I like grease pencil tools. It's been around since Blender 2.9. It's a really good plug-in, or add-on, I guess you'd say. And it's just easier to see what you're doing when you can rotate the screen, right? Okay, and then at any time I can just hit 1 and or 9, and it's just going to revert back to you guys know what I'm trying to say. It's going to revert back to the initialized front or back view, basically, is what it's really doing. Okay, let's erase that line. Okay, so I'm kind of taking some liberties here with the hand. And probably the thumb would be more like, well, let me see. Let me turn my hand around like that. Okay. Actually, what the thumb does is it actually pops up right about there. Cool. Okay, got a little problem. Let's grab that. Boom, boom, boom. Let's make sure we're centered on the 3D cursor. And I'm going to turn on proportional editing and scale this. Okay, let's move that. Okay, you see what I'm doing here? The hand's just a little too big. That's probably pretty good. Back to draw mode. Cool. We don't have all closed shapes, that's for sure. So we'll probably bump into some issues at inking time, but we'll see. Alright, so now we just rock and roll and go forward. Boom, 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 boom. Boo-doo-boo, 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 boo-doo-boo. Zuko's been very good today. He seems to know when I'm live streaming and he doesn't chirp. Zuko, of course, is named after Prince Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Zuko is an African gray parrot, a very rare kind of bird, at least in the United States. I don't even know if you can get them anymore. A few years ago, certainly. Well, I think you can get them bred. Like you can get in other words, you're going to get a domestically bred bird that's probably got all kinds of problems. I believe they do not ship them from South Africa anymore. I think we got Zuko shortly before the lid got popped down on the what would you call it? Exotic bird trade, I guess you'd say. So actually, I need to reset the rotation since I did the rotation in camera mode. If I'm in the front view like this, then I don't need to hit reset rotation. I just hit 1 and go back to the front view. Boink. Okay. This looks stupid to me. Now that I zoom out and look at it. This needs a little more bulk. And this feels wrong because it's not synced with this quite as well as it should be. So I'm going to make a judgment call on that one. Okay. Here, would it help to do this? You betcha. Boom, 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 boom. Remember, it is a cartoon, people. It's a cartoon. Okay, so now, as long as we're thinking about it, gotta go, Max Magnus says. I was going to ask Amar, the capability of the eraser. Let's just see something here. I don't think it's possible without an add-on, like an eraser that basically calculates the end of that. And you guys, I think, know what I'm trying to do here. The reason it requires an add-on is that what if you have two vertices of the grease pencil stroke that are on either side of this? Then it has to make a choice to either make this line too long or too short. So the add-on, what would the add-on do is the add-on would calculate the intersection and add a vertex right there, so that it then can erase it perfectly. So in practice, the easier solution is just erase it aggressively and then refix the connection. That's all. Boop. Like that. That, I don't know why it feels like it's being a little touchy on thickness. Alright, back to that. What do we got? What do we got? This looks a little dubious. Definitely. Let's fix that. Friends. I don't like that either. Poof. Okay. Now, it is true, by the way, that when I did this before, I went, actually, let's select linked and Control C. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, what is probably stupidly obvious, I'm going to come over here, go back into edit mode, actually turn off proportional editing, hit Control V, hit the G key, okay? And I'm going to zoom out because I don't know where I need to be to make this work. I'm going to shift it on the X -1, enter. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here and paste this in. Well, it's already pasted, but let's change this to median point. So it rotates around its own median point. And that looks pretty good, friends. That looks pretty good. Now we've got everything in place where we can do the additional sculpting down here and make it all work.
I like it to marry mucho.
Thing I got to do is got to draw Mel's face, don't I? Yes, I do. I do. Crazy how distorted this is, and yet, I mean, when it played back in the pencil test, it just looked incredible. It looked really good. I'm just going to play it loose, see how it goes, and we'll probably have to use the you know, we'll have to do some hand painting just to get all the lines closed here. Alright, so this is going to be shift. Right. Okay. Then what do we get here? So this is the point where we say, well, should we just color it? Should we do what we did here? This did work. Once I got off trying to use the empty to parent it and stuff, everything worked. So let's just go ahead and kill the sketch layer and let's try it. This will be an unusual shot. In other words, I'm getting rid of the fills layer. Gone. The Tia layer is for the walking past in the foreground. So let's stop everything for half a second and see what happened there. Oh, okay, so Tia walks across here. Yep, everything's working fine. Okay, cool. So let's come back here. And what we want to do is, again, for those who are newbies, I don't recommend the following. Okay? I'm a big boy. I've been doing Blender for 25 years. I can do this stuff. You probably shouldn't, but if you want to, it's your prerogative. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go to the advanced, and I'm going to just put this stroke extension at the minimum. That did the trick. Okay. Nope. Okay, so what we're going to do here is go like this. Wait a second. Stop everything. Stop. Ah. Okay. That ought to do the trick. Just minimal. Usually, in most cases, minimal stroke extension does the trick. Now, you might have to go in and do some of this, which I'm still in the fill tool. I'm just hitting shift so that it'll let me draw the shapes. Now, just be aware. This is all at your discretion, how you want to do this stuff. Okay, so here's what I was talking about. This has to, I need to draw these shapes, for example, to close the shapes. Otherwise, they're not going to fill in a quadzillion years. There we go. Groovy. So what we're doing is we're baking, effectively baking in. Oh, I see the problem. Okay, I want to make a note of this. This is another thing. Let me save this. I want to look at my default. File, save. File, new. Because this is I've bumped into this multiple times. All right, let's go to the fill tool. Yeah, this is the problem. This needs to be 1.5. Leak size needs to be 1. Thickness needs to be 1. Advanced, generally speaking, that's desirable. The minimal leak detection. Okay, now I go back to the pencil and file, defaults, save startup file. Okay, did this work? That's the question. Let's find out. Let's create a new file. I'm not going to save this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add some lines. I'm going to change to the charcoal ink material. Okay, I need to create a frame or have auto turned on. Let's just do it this way, keep it simple. We're just going to find out now. Okay, so now we're going to go to the fills layer, pick your favorite color, and now let's see what happens. First of all, yes, precision's 1.5, leak is 1, thickness is 1, and the stroke extension is on. This should be required 2 clicks, but basically works great. Those are good defaults. Your mileage may vary. I'm telling you, they're pretty good defaults. So the reason I was getting so many like pretty sizable gaps here was because of that setting. And this is, and I tell you, it's just, I played around with this a lot, and these settings are bad settings. They result in every single fill always having some, you know, just a little bit of white at the edges. You know what I mean? It just doesn't quite do the job. Okay, cool. Of course, that's the wrong thing I'm trying to fill. So now I hit undo. It's this I was trying to do. Okay, so now that's such a small, thin area that it's still got some flaws, but that's going to be easy to fix in a minute, and I'll show you how. Like this. First of all, we just go ahead and do the skin. Okay, stop everything. Big problem. Stop everything. Totally just forgot one really important point. We're supposed to be drawing strokes on back right now, because what we're, and I think I had this wrong when I did the hair, but basically I think we're okay. It looks all right. Okay, the strokes are supposed to be drawn behind. Why? I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so now we put the skin in there. Now watch this. Because we're drawing the strokes on back, if I hit if I hit shift and lasso this, all that's going to be filled is the areas that previously weren't. Okay, you still have a little bit of a leak there, but you know, basically it works pretty well. So you can tighten up all these little glitches. Pretty brain dead, really. Okay, boom, boom. And this is obviously skin. And there ain't no shortcut here, friends. There ain't no shortcuts at all. You just got to do it bit by bit. This color is a little bit wrong. It's a little bit too much in the white, or white. I can't even talk here. In the green direction. A little too much aqua sort of color. Okay, so then, like, the example here would be what I was talking about before. If I just go like this, yes, it's filling in all those gaps with skin color. It just doesn't matter. It all goes by really quick, and you're just not going to notice it. Boop, boop. Boop, boop. Okay, let's just keep rocking. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, boop, boop. Well, I guess we don't need to do that twice, but the world will keep turning if we do. Okay, we'll touch that up here in half a second. And so then what we do here, actually let me grab that. What we do here is we switch it back into the mode where we're not drawing strokes. Well, I guess we could do it here. But right here, this is actually, right here is where we see the real problem with baking your color and everything and lines and all into one layer. The problem is when you've got, here I've got a fill that the skin color accidentally covered the eyebrows, and I really didn't want it to. So now to correct that, I have to hand paint it, but the problem is I can't use draw strokes on back. I have to hand fill it, and let me try that. That's actually okay. I hate to admit it, but that's actually okay. Meaning you run the risk of painting over your ink lines, right? That's the basic thing we're vigilant about here. So just doing the lasso thing, fills in the blank frames. The fact that they're skin tone and not the correct color for each little tiny dot does not matter. It just, friends, trust me, it doesn't matter. You can't see it. Okay, stop. Oh wait, I was in behind mode. Okay, cool. Notice, by the way, that I keep saying behind mode when what I mean is draw strokes on back. If I was in Krita right now, it would be called behind mode. It's a blending mode. In Blender, it's not a blending mode. It's a algorithm by which the grease pencil strokes or shapes are placed on the screen. Are they placed on the screen over top of or underneath of strokes that were already there before? That's all. So, not a big deal. This guy needs to be like that, that. That doesn't want to fill. Okay, that's all right. Okay. Yeah, looks good. Looks fine. Skin, back to the skin color. We want to make this stroke extension as minimal as possible. But yeah, it's a crazy time, man. I got so much stuff going on right now. Like I said, I think I'm booked through 2026. There's just no two ways about it. Okay, really? How much stroke extension do you need, you fool? Oh, well, that would explain a lot. Yeah, you kind of have to block it down here. Duh. You fool. You absolute fool. All right, so skin. That's going to clean up some of the weirdness. No big deal. Okay, and then in his mouth, I think I'm going to use charcoal ink filled. Let's just see how it goes. Okay, that was not what we expected. Let's turn stroke extension down as far as we can. That's weird. I wonder why I did that. Huh. Well, as I like to say, the world will keep turning. We'll just do it the hard way. Okay, skin, boom. I need a hotkey for that. I actually need a hotkey to turn draw strokes on back off and on. And also additive mode. Those two things, I should add some hotkeys for that. Maybe they're already in there and I don't know what they are. But if anybody knows, speak up. I am curious. Curious, I say. All right, here we go. Now this is the one that's going to be, when we turn the sketch back on, you'll see that this is going to be some just sculpted and then some repeating animation stuff. If you're going, I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. Sorry. Poof. See how cool it is? Draw strokes on back. It means that everything I draw can't accidentally overwrite something that you wouldn't want to overwrite. Cool. And now I can do this. See? Isn't that pretty? Simple. Simple, friends. Ah. 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 Easy. Smooth. Fun. We're just doing the work of the legendary world famous animator who sits in his domain all by his lonesome in the solitude of nothingness and simply draws his bloody cartoon. I wonder if, did the mail come? I didn't hear the postman. I'm hoping, like I said, I'm hoping the fourth quarter royalty statement for Salt and Light will be here today. Should be coming soon. See, look at this. I'm using blue. You can't see that it's blue. that the stray pixels are being colored blue, can you? I mean, if you look real close, like it's on the screen for 1 second, like you're gonna notice that? Come on, don't be stupid. All right, so we go back here. Let's turn the sketch layer back on, because that'll give us some guidance as to what we're doing on the next couple frames. But there's one thing missing, isn't there? If we're going to do this, we've got to do it all the way, which means we've got to add the shadow filled material, and we have to bake the shadows into Melchizedek. The thing about doing it this way, as opposed to putting the shadows on their own layer, okay, that was because this was on. That was a mistake. Is that you cannot do multiple strokes that overlap each other, or the shadow will get denser and denser and denser. I can probably demonstrate that here. See? Now, you might want to use that to your advantage. It can be quite a useful thing for background paintings and things like that. But, and plus, being all baked into one layer, we don't have any way to use masking. That means I have to be careful to stay inside the lines. Whereas normally, if the shadows were on a separate layer, I could be pretty loose about that. Okay, that's actually not going to work. This is a good example of what I was talking about. Okay, because really what we want here is something like this. And again, I need to draw the whole thing accurately and inside the lines, or I'm going to have trouble. Trouble with a capital T. Now this is an example where you could use this to your advantage. Just double it up, and that darkens it up, which is kind of cool. I think we'll do that like that. Keep these lines as straight as I can, just because I can. Okay. Yep. And I just have to go through and do that on each frame. Ploof. Ploof. This, you could fix this maybe with some editing, but again, it's on the screen for 1 frame. Yeah, it's on the screen for 1 frame. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, friends. And if it doesn't matter, we ain't gonna sweat it. We're just not. But just to be clear, the answer to everything I'm doing right now, where I'm putting everything on one layer just as a masochistic experiment, the thing to really do is put it on separate layers the way we usually do. The shadows are on their own layer and using masking. Do it that way, and then do the sculpting without auto lock and active layers. Turn that off so that you can unlock multiple layers and sculpt them all in tandem. That would actually be by far the smarter way to do it. So again, I'm being a little masochistic here, no doubt about it. But once in a while, why not, right? Isn't going to kill us to keep trying different workflows. We're still in a learning mode. I've only been working on Salt and Light episode 3 for, at this point, about a month. A little over a month, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think it was, I don't know. It was somewhere, maybe it was mid-December when I really kind of started getting serious about it. I can't remember now. When you're old like me, you can't bloody remember. You just can't. You know? Sorry. Can't remember. Yeah, this is way more tedious than putting it on a single layer, because if it's on its own layer, the masking just takes, you don't have to worry about, like right there, I could just add another line to fill in that bit that I didn't quite do right, and it would all just look solid, and I probably should be in Eevee mode so I can make sure that things are going to look the way I expect. I would say, without a doubt, this is not quite working, and I would be a fool to not check this by doing an actual live render. Yeah, looks like everything's okay. Looks like everything's going to be fine. Because sometimes with Blender I've been getting weird anomalies at the render stage that didn't show up in the fully rendered preview, which is a little crazy, but there it is, friends. So now you got one little flaw right there. Oh, doesn't matter. It's only on the screen one frame. Now this one matters. This one matters because this is going to be duplicated and sculpted to animate him kind of shaking when he yawns. As we often do, you kind of go like that. Well, guess what? He's going to do that. He's gonna do that, friends. Okay, I didn't like that at all. Move a little more slowly, Dave. Move a little more slowly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the shadows would be significantly faster doing it the normal way. So if somebody's out there confused and doesn't know what I'm talking about, and like, well, what do you mean by the normal way? I'll explain it if you want. Otherwise, I'm not going to explain it. So I'm only going to explain it if somebody asks. The gist of it is, the normal way is that shadows go on their own layer, and they are masked, which means that the shadows are kept by Blender from appearing outside of where it's colored in. Make sense? So that means you can just scribble the arrow shape with a big blob like this, but the shadow will only show inside of where his body is. Quite useful. So you could draw it like that and none of this would show. And the way you accomplish that is by putting it on its own layer like this, and then turning on masking and using one of the other layers, which in this case would be the one I'm working on right now, is the source of the mask. Makes sense, friends? I'm sure it does. I'm sure it makes perfect sense. Okay. That feels pretty good. Alright, so what do we have here? Okay. Alright, so let's do it this way. I'm going to go Alt-A. I'm going to select all of this. Go back to putting this here. We want our rotation to actually be on the 3D cursor, and we want proportional editing to be on. So now if we rotate him, and we expand the influence of the proportional editing tool, okay, so I do believe, assuming this is complete, and I think it is, then what I did, oh darn it, I do it every time. Go back into draw mode. Okay, what I'm trying to do is Shift Delete, or Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. Okay, so you're going, what did you just do, man? I just duplicated 2 keyframes, so watch what happens. He walks out of the cave, we switch to the front. See? Right? Easy peasy. Easy peasy. And then what we do is we take one, which is basically that. So we take these 3 frames right here, we duplicate these, and then watch this. Then we hit scale. So we're scaling the whole group of keyframes in the negative direction, which effectively puts them in reverse order. Then I hit the G key to move the keys back to here, and then watch what happens. See? Isn't that great? Easy, easy, easy. Okay, question. Well, okay. These keyframes that I'm seeing here in the summary are all Tianara, so they have nothing to do with Mel. So what we want to do is go up to here, and I believe there's going to be one little keyframe. Okay, one keyframe that is a what would you call it? It's an anticipation. So I'm going to go to, if you want to mess with a character in a way that's going to actually look good using sculpting tools with their head, usually you're looking at the third eye. You're looking at right about here. When you grab right there, what you find is it's not perfect, but you can move a lot and have it look right. Okay? So in this case, what we're doing is we're just squunching down a little bit. Okay? That was the anticipation. And then let me see how that matches. I'm looking at where the hair is. Okay, I'm actually putting my finger or my stylus on the screen to mark where his hair is. And then I'm using the mouse to go back to here. And yes, that does appear to be correct. So if it's mysterious, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking this frame here and putting it there as a tween. Okay, except the problem is his eyes are supposed to pop open. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and let's just exaggerate him a little bit and then go into draw mode. And essentially what we have to do here, oops, sorry, we were in fill mode. Okay, we're still in fill mode. I clicked and nothing happened. That's crazy. It makes me a little winky when I click something and I don't realize that it actually didn't respond to my click. That's a little strange, but that's what happens. So blah, blah, blah. Let's take this. You can see it's destroying some of the shadows. So, okay, so here's another way that having everything in one layer is horrific. You really don't want to do what I'm doing. Here's why. Now these shadows simply have to all be replaced because there's just no way to erase stuff that's, you know, ink lines without accidentally erasing part of the shadows too and stuff like that. Okay, so, okay. Now what we're going to do is go back to draw mode. And I'm going to take the sketch layer and actually put it above and crank up the opacity so I'm not fighting with this at all. I want to see exactly what this is supposed to be, and I can see right now this is what it's supposed to be. Alright, let's try randomize, strength, thickness, smooth. Let's take smooth. We don't want it to be, we want it to be as strong as possible. And again, same problem again. I probably could try using pinch. Pinch might do the trick. That's push, grab. Where's pinch? This is pinch. That's clone. This is pinch. Okay, let's see what pinch does. Just zoom in. Kinda works. Kinda works. It doesn't really smooth it. Honestly, it's not the greatest. But it's weird because the lines and the shapes that are filling the lines are not being smoothed in perfect, together in tandem. The only explanation I could give for that would be that there's probably more vertices of resolution perhaps in the line than there are in the shape, so the smoothing effect affects them differently. It's still okay. Basically, this is all okay. I can just, you know, essentially fine tune it like that. The little tiny gaps aren't going to be something you're going to see. Okay, so here, I guess I moved his nose a little bit up, and I moved his mouth a little bit down. And so now let's draw. Nope, we want that. That's what I thought. That's why I checked it. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's add a new material. It's going to be a fill material, and it's going to be not white, but close to white. And let's just put that in there. And we're going to go ahead and allow that to overlap the hair. That's okay. And then for now, we're going to take this charcoal ink and just loosely, you know, you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so up here, that's a little thick, of course, but okay. Stop everything. Let's redo that. Go here, put the sketch layer back on the bottom. And do we want to get a little crazy with it? I don't know. This is usually why I have the sketch layer above, but I have it turned down. Let's just look at how this feels. Okay, so this is not sufficient. What we need to do now is take the sculpt, and what's happening? It's sculpting the wrong layer. I think I would even go a little further. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scrunch way down. Like I said, grab the somewhere around the bridge of the eye or the middle of the forehead. And then pop back up. And now we have a little bit of drawing to do. Number one, again, I'll tell you that the experiment was a noble experiment, but I won't ever do it again. This business of putting the yeah, but you can see it's just you run into so many things downstream that make you regret it, that it's just not worth it. So, as I say, world will keep turning. But now what we're going to do is that allows us to redraw his face. And this, oh, come on, stop. You villain. Yeah, dealing with a vector-based format is just fundamentally different than dealing with pixels. It's just different, and it's a lot different. Okay, why that keeps happening probably is because the skin actually consists of several strokes, and one of them actually goes down here, and you can't see it, right? But this really probably needs to be erased as well. So you can see it's a bit of a mess. That's okay, though. Once you get your bearings, it's not like it takes that long to go back in and, you know, fix it up. Okay, that's what I kind of wanted to avoid, though. So, okay, there may be a way, guys. There may be a way. I need to slow down here. Take a deep breath. If I lock the skin color, Ta-da, problem solved. So there you go. There's a tool in your toolkit. You can always lock the skin color, and things like that are one of the ways that you do find to take clunky, kind of dumb ways of working, like putting everything in one layer, and still make it work. That's basically what you're witnessing right there. We'll find a way to make it work. Okay, so there's that. Technically his, and so now this is important. I want to remember to unlock that, because later I'm going to be like, you know, I'll be trying to erase something and it won't erase. I'm like, why won't it erase? Well, because you locked it earlier, dummy. Okay. Now back up. Right about there. Okay, do we have our colors the way we think they need to be? I think we do. So, what are we going to do? Let's use this material. Okay, this is actually a great example again of being problematic. And it becomes a big mess. You don't know what I'm talking about? I'll tell you here in a minute. Stop, stop, stop. I just clicked on this and nothing freaking happened. That will give me the willies. That will actually put me in rant mode. I cannot stand it when a software tool, you know, you click something and it's like, well, you know, maybe it'll work this time, but maybe not. You know, we'll just decide sometime. Okay. Again, just worst idea in the world was putting everything on one layer. And admittedly, I could move things to another layer now if I wanted to. We're so close to the finish that, well, why bother? Okay, so what am I talking about? Well, the problem is this material, I can't use draw strokes on back, because if I do, the okay, stop. Hold on. I keep hitting the wrong thing. Slow down, Dave. Okay. So now what's going to happen is no matter what I do, I can't avoid covering up the iris, the pupils. Now, can I solve that a little bit? Yes. I can grab this stroke, shift grab this stroke, hit L for select length. Okay, so now what I want to do is stroke. Is it stroke or is it grease pencil or is it point? Stroke. No. I'm looking for what used to exist, which is just the simple move up, move down kind of thing like you have in any vector art program. It used to be, I actually used to have it tied to hotkeys in Blender 2.79. Does anybody know where's the option to take these strokes that I just grabbed and just move them down so that they're behind the black strokes? I know it exists here somewhere. Move to layer. I could move them to another layer. Obviously, I don't want to do that. I'm trying to torture myself by keeping everything. It's arrange. Arrange. So we want to send backward. Okay, so it's page up and page down. Excellent. That's very helpful. So now I should be able to hit page down. There you go. Okay, so there is a way. Just, you know, don't kid yourself. There is a way. It's just a little clunky, that's all. Okay, so here. Okay, that's fine. So now what we'll do is we're in draw mode, fill mode. Okay, so again, here's the problem we're going to have. Okay, you see what happened? It's not horrible, but it's not ideal. We actually are biting into the ink lines a little bit. So again, world will keep turning. Not that big of a deal, but definitely a thing. Definitely that looks okay. Okay. All right. So now what we can do is simply go with the pencil And we can just go back in and tighten these up. So just be aware, in this whole scene, everything, I would say right now, everything's taking probably about 3 times longer than it should because of the way I have everything baked into a single layer. Well, as I said, I don't know that I've ever done that and failed to regret it, but yeah, I did it. I tried it, so what the heck. So now let's just keep rocking and rolling with it. And make it work, friends. Make it work. Okay, that's okay. Poofity poof. Okay, that will not work. Undo, undo. Let me see this. Yeah, actually, it's wrong here too as well. See, again, same thing. Obviously, you could solo a material. What I'm going to do is go like this, and I'm going to keep lowering the influence. Okay, stop. Okay, I got to think. What I'm trying to modify is this, actually. Okay, but wait. That's one stroke. That's one stroke. Why, when I click there, I'm actually... Oh, I see. Okay. This is what I meant to grab. So that's why, this is why I say it's 3 times as long. Everything I'm doing right now, you would never even have to do it at all if everything was just on its own layer. Never. Okay, and the only way I can prevent the silliness that you're witnessing right now is I have to lock this and lock this. That probably will do the trick, as you can see now, but it didn't. Okay, can you imagine having to spend all day doing nothing but locking and unlocking layers? Yeah, not a great way to work. Not a great way to work at all. Pretty awful. But there it is. Okay, so there's that. And now we're back to here. And we have to re-unlock everything. Yeah, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I tell you, that's bad, undescribably bad idea. Putting the shadows and everything in one layer. But I had to do it. It is actually important that I did it, because since I've really only been working with Blender for a short time here on this project, I've just needed to try everything in sight and just see what things work and what things backfire. It's just the way it is. I can't say that's a bad thing. And I did say when I first did it that I'd probably regret it, so no big shock there. Okay. This can probably be pretty simple because it's a 1-frame tween, so let's just be sloppy about it. Shouldn't matter much. Yeah, that's fine. And then, boop. Okay, this one we need to be careful with. This one we need to be careful with. I can see a flaw in the color. So skin color right here, that needs to be. Oops, I didn't mean to hit the stabilizer. It was because usually when I draw shapes, I am in fill mode, and in fill mode you hit shift to draw a shape instead of doing a fill operation. Whereas if you are in draw mode, when you hit shift, well, it invokes the stabilizer. Oh my. Brutal, friends, brutal. But we're getting there. We're actually almost done. What's the best way to do what I'm trying to do right now? Like this. That's probably not quite what I was looking for. And obviously, I mean, that'll probably work. This can be a little loosey-goosey as long as it feels good. That's the important thing. I don't want those 2 lines in there. Thought maybe I did, but I don't. Okay, I think the shot's done other than dealing with backgrounds. Oh, that's gorgeous. That is spectacular. Okay, I like it. Everything's fine. Everything's cool. I shouldn't have done the 1 layer thing, but I did, and I survived it. So, but yeah, that's the whole shot. So what do we got here? At 8 frames per second, we're at 60. What is that? 7.5 seconds. So if I can get the backgrounds in, what that will mean is in the last couple days, let's see, from 16 to 24 basically. Yeah, I mean I've done about 23 seconds. So, but like the 1 layer thing, there's a lot of stuff that I'm still kind of learning as I go, so not actually that big of a deal. Did I get the render setting correct here? I think I did. Control F12. Let's see how it feels in the show. Do 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 do. Golly, I love that water, and I love that drawing of Tianara too, and I love that yawn. Boop. Everything's rocking, guys. I just need to up the speed a little bit. Basically, everything's rocking. Okay, that's it for me. That's it for now. Donna Yo says, Sebut Namaku Bang. I have absolutely no idea what that means. So that's it for me. As you guys know, there will be more later.